I'll call this meeting to order. Since we, a little bit later this morning, we'll be visiting with the general and all of his troops, and it's appropriate that we get started early since we're in the military this morning. So, Heather, would you please call roll?
Senator Anderson?
Here.
Senator Furphy?
Excused.
Senator McEwen?
Here.
Senator Pappas?
Here.
Representative Baker?
Here.
Representative Burt?
Here.
Representative Henderson?
Here.
Representative McGuire?
Here.
Representative Obermueller?
Here.
Representative O'Hearn?
Here.
Representative Romero Martinez?
Here.
Representative Stivar? Co-Chairman Burkhart?
Here.
Chairman Landon?
By golly, I'm here, Heather. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everyone again. I know we'll visit quickly tomorrow, but I just want to say it's been great. Today we get to begin to finish up all of our interim work. I think it's been a really good interim. We've done a lot of work, and today we have several things to consider. So we'll get into it in just a moment. Mr. Co-Chairman, any comments to get us started this morning?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. Yeah, we've got a lot of work, so stay on track, on subject. If you look, this is a fairly aggressive agenda. We will make some changes. Do you want to talk about those changes now or as we get to them, Mr. Co-Chair?
You can go ahead and look at them if you want, Mr.
So,
Chairman.
a couple things. We are working off agenda dated October 26th. So some of you may have an older agenda, but this is the one we'll work off of. It's pretty much the same, but there are a few changes. If you go over to on second page, item 10, driver service bill drafts, we will probably not get to the bill draft on special license plates, community colleges, or organ donations. We just have a lot of work. Okay. Representative Stiver? Oh, you have the latest one, okay. And we will probably change the order on some things. I don't think will make a lot of difference. I don't think we have anyone wanting to testify on those issues we're changing. So just in order. So with that, and you want to talk lunch?
Mr. Chairman, a couple additional things. Thank you very much. The road usage charge report that we had originally scheduled for the second day committee, we're going to ask Representative Henderson and Senator Pappas to maybe jump up to this afternoon at about 4:30, and we'll hear from them on that. That's a minor change. Regarding lunch, we're going to provide some lunch in the Senate lunchroom at noon, and we'll have that taken care of. So we'll do a quick break for lunch today, probably about the 30-minute variety, so that we can get back here and get started. So we can kind of reimburse on the lunch. We'll let you know on that, but we'll order that in and it'll be upstairs. With that, I think we're all set. Committee, let's go to work. And General, good morning. It's great to see you and your associates, and we look forward to the visit. So take it away.
Hey, good morning, Senator Landon, Chairman Landon, Chairman Burkhart, members of the Transportation Committee. For the record, my name is Major General Greg Porter, and I serve as the Adjutant General for the state of Wyoming. Thought before I rolled in, we could do a quick introduction because I brought some folks that maybe you haven't met, but let me start with the folks that you do know. But on my right here is Mr. Tim Shepard, who is our Executive Director for the Veterans Commission. To my left is Chris Smith, who's the Senior Legal Advisor for the department. Back to my right here is Command Chief Josh Moore. He is our Senior Enlisted Advisor and doing a great job for us. Back behind us here is Mrs. Michelle Mulberry. Michelle is our new prevention workforce manager. She also serves as Brigadier General Mulberry in the Guard on the traditional side as our Air Chief of Staff. Next to her is our joint, our J5, which is our plans, our strategic planner. That's Mr. Chris, or Colonel Chris Troche. On this side in the back there, you know Dan's got the back covered. That's Major Dan Johnson. He serves the exec. So that's the team we've got with us here today.
General, we can hear you well. I failed to mention, committee, just a reminder, we are streaming live, so let's watch the offline conversations, but also in this room, not a lot of acoustics, so I would ask for everyone to stay close to the microphone. Use your broadcast voices, okay? It's a beautiful afternoon for baseball. Here we go. General, take it away.
All right, sir, if we go to the next slide, let's talk the agenda very quickly.
Mr. Co-Chairman has a question already.
Question, General. It was my understanding that Major Johnson was going to do these presentations.
He's on tap, sir.
Okay, thank you.
We don't want to make him any more nervous than it's going on right now, so. Hey, sir, we got some reports that we owe the committee today, but real quickly, I thought I'd give you a quick update on things going on in the military department. Follow that up quickly. I'll give you the annual report on sexual harassment and sexual assault. Follow that up with a discussion about Cowboy Challenge. I really want to go through the timeline of how that decision came about, and then we'll roll into the session interim study topics, hopefully with the intent of seeing the draft bills and getting that squared away as we go forward. Any questions on the agenda before we drive on?
Questions, committee? Okay. Please proceed, General.
All right. I forgot to introduce Mrs. Erica Legursky, too, who is our liaison from the military department to the governor's office. So
it's good to see Ms. Legursky here. Thank you, Erica. Good to see you. And also Senator Boner, good to see you this morning. Take it away, General.
All right. Sounds good. Hey, sir, quickly, just wanted to give a quick update on COVID-19 vaccine updates. Not a lot has changed since we discussed in August. I will just tell you, Air Guard is still enjoined from doing any adverse action against folks that have a religious exemption, either pending or has come back denied. We have had a few come back denied, about 8 of them so far that I'm tracking, but given the status of the court case right now, those airmen are still drilling with us and still doing their thing. The only thing they really can't do is deploy, and we haven't had an issue with that just yet. So Air Guard is tracking pretty well with what I talked about in August. If we look at the Army Guard, about the same, not a significant change in terms of vaccinations. We're getting onesies and twosies that come up, but the service still hasn't published guidance yet on what to do with those folks that are what we call a hard no, that are simply say, hey, listen, I'm not going to get the immunization. So we do have 58 religious exemptions still on the Army side, 54 on the air that we're waiting to get some sort of resolution on. Like I said, we had about 8 come back on the air side, 0 on the Army side yet that's come back. And as I said, no guidance about what to do with those personnel that are just hard nosed about it. So we'll continue to monitor it and see where it goes. As I told you in last month, it is a significant impact to our strength if all these soldiers and airmen elect to get out at the end of the day. But like I said, we'll continue to work on that. Any questions on that one before I go on? Okay.
Questions, committee? Okay,
all right, very quickly, we have a few folks out. We've got about 8 Air Guardsmen really deployed all over the place, from Central Command to Africa Command to European Command and Southern Command. So those folks start coming back here before the holidays, and so far they've been doing a great job over here. Everything that we've heard from all the folks they supported, they're just doing a fantastic job. Army Guard deployments right now, we've got 27 folks that are part of an enhanced aviation brigade out of Arkansas, New York. They're kind of all over the place, but they're also deployed into the CENTCOM region, everywhere from Kuwait to Jordan to Syria, all the way across there, doing that mission. I've got 75 members of the golf company supposed to deploy next year. They're starting to get some word that that may not happen, that they may be off-ramped and do something different. So I'll keep you posted on that right now. So we'll see what the aviation company does with more Blackhawks going to SimCom. We'll just have to see what that looks like. Joint staff really preparing for Vigilant Guard. I think I gave a quick update on Vigilant Guard. It's a pretty significant national exercise that we'll participate in the month of June. It really is going to get after our domestic response piece. And if you look at all of the scenarios, all the disasters that are going to drive that exercise, it's going to be a bad day in Wyoming that day. We got bridges falling down and earthquakes and volcanoes and hailstorms and power outages. Everything is going to go on that. So it's not a good day. But a lot of partners they're going to work with within the state, and we're also bringing some folks outside the state to get ready for that. So a lot of focus on getting ready for Vigilant Guard. And then we continue to do multiple search and rescue missions, lost hunters time of the year, and pretty soon we'll have snowmobilers and skiers and that sort of thing. So joint staff continues to do a great job there. I will say also that our relationship with Tunisia continues to be very robust. Tunisia's got a referendum in December that's they're going to decide on their constitution, and that's going to be a pretty significant event for that country on which way they go and how they drive forward. But we've been doing quite a bit of work with Tunisia, and it's that partnership just continues to flourish and get better.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So general quick thing on updates. I've heard some rumors or information that the Air Force is looking at, again, this coming year, landing aircraft on Highway 789 north of Rawlins. Can you elaborate on that at all? Is it more than a rumor, or?
I think so, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Burkhardt, I've heard the same rumor. I had a discussion with Director Reiner, kind of gave me a heads up that Air Force Special Operations Command was interested in doing something similar to what we did in Rawlins a summer ago. Have not seen anything official come from them, so I don't have any much details on it, but Director Reiner did reach out to me and say, hey, I think there's some interest in sort of upping the scale on that. Different unit than what did it last year, so this is Air Force Special Operations Command, but I've heard the same rumor, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else, committee? Please proceed, General.
All right, let's go to the next slide if we could. Very quickly, Air Guard, just some military projects. They're working on their security forces building and combat arms training. That's going well. It looks like a building right now, and we expect that'll get finished up here in June at the start of the summer. They're also, we've got some I think we're going to get our vehicle maintenance aerospace ground unit equipment building, what we call the AGE, for 23. I think it's going to get on tap. We were working a little bit with the amount of inflation that's gone up, and the price of that building, it's kept going higher and higher. And but I think we got to a good place, and so I think we're gonna be able to execute that and get it going forward. So that'll be pretty good. That'll put the Air Guard base in pretty good stead in terms of military construction. The last thing we'll probably work on, it'll be the front gate and making sure that that's squared away. On the Army Guard side, up in Sheridan, the vehicle maintenance project is going through. We intend to build that right behind the current armory. It's a little tight, but we can do it. And really, between us and the community, that was the decided on location. So we
General,
continue.
can I back you up real quickly?
Yes, sir.
On the Air Guard side, is that building that you're referencing, is that the activity over on the airport?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman. No, sir. I'm assuming the activity that you're referring to is all that runway construction. The security building is kind of tucked back behind over by the dining facility. I don't think you could see it from any location that you're at. So that's probably the runway construction that you're, Mr. Chairman. On the Army Guard side, like I said, VMS looks like it's going to go in Sheridan. We did do a project with the Archer range out here at Cheyenne to try to help with their range pieces. That was really good. We also did some work up by in Carbon County, up by Arlington, trying to get some of the roads squared away and some of the game and fish buildings they had up there. The 133rd really did a nice job this year getting that squared away, so that was good. And then in the joint staff are really starting to prepare for winter storms, ice jams and that sort of thing. We'll actually have a brief this Friday to make sure we're squared away and preparation for Vigilant Guard. So it's pretty much the update on that side.
Committee, anything for the General? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, Where's Central Command, CENTCOM?
And so that's, when you think Kuwait, the headquarters of Central Command is actually in Florida, but that's where they're going. If you think Kuwait, Iraq, that's what we're talking about. And sorry, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to go through you on that one.
Okay, no problem. General, please proceed.
Hey, sir, I'm gonna jump down to Camp Guernsey and then turn it over to Mr. Shepard to talk Vets Commission. But Camp Guernsey, again, we're getting some good military construction for Camp Guernsey. New barracks this coming year in '23. We'll get one barracks this year and another one following the year after that. And we'll also get an administration building at the ammunition supply point, which is really needed. We did get some design funding for this firehouse at Camp Guernsey, which would also be helpful. Usually that means that we may see that again in military construction. That'll come to us and they give us the design piece of it. That hasn't been confirmed yet, and it may not come until '25, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get the firehouse and some equipment storage up on the Guernsey Airport.
So General, those barracks, is that in addition to the facilities we already have, or are you going to take some down and renovate, or?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's an addition. We still are short barrack space, and even after we put these two up, we'll still be short barrack space of some of the things we want to do there, so it'll be additive.
Okay.
All right. Any questions before I turn it over to Mr. Shepard and talk a little bit about Vets Commission and skilled nursing?
Okay.
Director Shepard, good morning. Thanks.
Good morning to you, Chairman. Tim Shepard, Executive Director, Wyoming Veterans Commission. And I first would like to talk to you about the Veterans Commission. I think the first bullet I'd like to refer to is the one where it has 100% of service officer positions, 8+ filled. And I put that plus sign on there because of a contract and an arrangement that we have that we're very proud of. So for Southwest Wyoming, actually 3 counties out there are covered by county service officers. And those are Sweetwater, Lincoln, and Sublette. And then to the southwest corner, we have Uinta, which is our responsibility out of the Wyoming Veterans Commission to provide that support to veterans, the service officers support. And at one point, our approach to that was to put a service officer in Uinta County. Well, that's a pretty small population for one service officer. So really it was too much capability and really was a pretty expensive arrangement, and it left us shorthanded elsewhere. So we made an arrangement and actually have a contract now with the element, the Tri-County Services out of Sweetwater County, and we actually have one of those 3 service officers covered down on Uinta County, and we pay for her time and only her time when she covers down on Uinta County. So it really does give us 8+ service officers. It also allowed us to take that service officer from Uinta County, move that person over to Laramie County, and then cover down on Carbon County with the one from, Albany County, out of Laramie, and to cover down on Carbon County. So we think it gives us a much better footprint, a much better ability to service the state with service officers. And I think it's cost effective and has worked well to date. Food insecurity is...
Mr. Co-Chairman's got a quick question, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, quick question. And we've talked about it before. The VA was considering or is closing some of their local medical facilities. One in Rollins, for example, being one of the ones listed, and concentrate everything here in Cheyenne. Where do we stand on all of that? I know we've objected to it, but I don't think we carry much weight.
Well, fortunately, we weren't the only state, Mr. Co-Chairman, that was in that boat where we thought there were facilities that were on that plan that shouldn't be on that plan, or that their remedies didn't really improve conditions for veterans. And so that plan has all but been scrapped. It's on the junk pile, and they're going back to the drawing board. So really, it's null and void at this point.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Go
So
ahead.
are veterans in some of the smaller communities, say Rollins and some of the others that relied on those services, can, for the time being at least, and probably well into the future, continue to rely on those services locally?
Yes, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So food insecurity, that's a program that originally started through a grant from the Bob Woodruff Foundation, and we're actually able to provide food cards to veterans who are food insecure, $150 for an individual veteran, $250 for a veteran with dependents. We've now been running that program for about 3 years. At one point, we had gaps where we would run out of funding, but we've found some closer donors and other funders, an additional grant. And so we've been able to maintain a good pot of money so that the program is consistent. And we've helped quite a few veterans with that program. The main reason I bring it up is, one, we have a great partnership now with VOA, the Volunteers of America, who work a lot of housing issues for veterans. One thing you find is if a veteran's having a problem with housing, he's probably having a problem with food insecurity. So we're able to work together and help them with housing, help them with food insecurity. Oh, by the way, where do you stand with your VA claim? How are you doing otherwise? So it's given us a much more full service look at veterans and trying to help them hopefully get back on their feet and be able to care for themselves.
Director, I've got a quick question on that front. You partially answered it with other agencies being able to assist, but do you run into difficulty identifying some of these veterans who could use a little bit of help? Knowing the veterans in my family, they're not going to say anything usually to anybody. Have you been able to identify the veterans that need the help?
Mr. Chairman, I think for the most part, the answer to that is yes. It's not 100%, but we're using the Legion, we use the VFW, we use the Disabled American Veterans. There's a myriad, our own commissioners, our own service officers, the VOA. Our partners in this program just continue to grow, and so I think we're getting closer to that 100% mark. Probably will never get there, but we're working towards it.
Good deal. Thank you.
Veterans
Representative
Museum.
Romero Martinez.
Oh,
Just a follow-up question to the previous question. In years past, one of the oldest Hispanic military family organizations, the American GI Forum of the United States, was founded by Hector P. Garcia. And I know we had one here at one point. There were 4 or 5 in the state. I know all the ones central, east, and west closed down. Those Latin American Federation was a coalition with them, along with the group LULAC, the Latin American Union, which would primarily started off helping education and military, and then proceeded from there to scholarships. And I know the current organization is called Forum 619, but this is an important, there is a substantial amount of Latinos who served in the military from the tunnel rats on, and I don't have to go through a whole history. I just wanted to encourage that maybe there be some kind of collaboration with your office with the leadership gap that we do face in the Hispanic community in order to fill those gaps and regain that charter. And that building is directly across from that $5 million Safeway on South Greeley Highway, which is right next to that veteran boot rock deal. And I'm one of those veterans, so I'm not going to be ashamed. I'll just say it right here, right now, in case you guys didn't know. You can just look at my income statements and know that I served in the Air National Guard for 5 years plus. So I appreciate all the work that you do, and I just wanted to make a plug for maybe helping. The organization has a congressional charter that's equivalent to that of American Legion and the other organizations that you did mention. So, and I digress, and thank you for listening for all that you do also. Thank you, sir.
So Director Shepherd, I think the question is there room for further collaboration with what the representative is referring to?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I made a note, and Representative, if I could, I'd like to get with you and maybe work through that and see what we can do.
Absolutely. I think the national commanding post is in Pueblo, Colorado, but it really does help when there's collaboration, and I would be most happy to help with that. Thank you, sir.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Go ahead, Director. Thanks.
All right, and so then I wanted to talk about the Veterans Museum. I did want to do a shout out to Representative McGuire. He has been a huge, he's part of the Friends of the Museum, and has been a great asset in helping us trying to move forward to grow our footprint and to make sure that we maintain that great resource we have up in Casper. I'm proud to say that our numbers are through the roof. Some of that, again, goes back to Representative McGuire in an event that we held up there in May. That certainly helped. But it continues to move forward, and we're actually looking at potentially moving our collection storage onto the airport, which would be a huge savings to us in time and effort. So that continues to move forward, and we'll continue to look at that and ways to continue to develop the museum footprint.
Director Shepherd, I appreciate as well the work of the representative. He's done a terrific job raising the level of awareness, and beyond that, it was really a nice visit that the committee had early in the year to get a chance to get up there and enjoy a cookout and whatever. So thank you for those words. Spot on. Thank you. Anything, Senator Anderson?
Mr. Chairman, that facility for storage, I understood that has to be climate controlled. Is that something you're going to have at the airport? Climate controlled, humidity and all that control?
Mr. Chairman, through you for the senator. Yes, that's part of, we have actually sat down with the airport board and worked through a scope of work and included what we felt were the requirements for it to be, to maintain a collection storage. And that includes humidity control.
Further questions, committee? Okay, Director Shepherd, please continue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move on to skilled nursing facility. And as I think the committee knows, that was dedicated on October 20th. We had a great ceremony up in Buffalo. We had the governor there as our keynote speaker. And if we can go to the next slide. So that's what was what we originally proposed for the skilled nursing facility, and then I'd like to go to the next slide. And so there's a view of the skilled nursing, one of the units, skilled nursing facility number 3, as it stands today.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, as I understand it, none of those windows look out toward the mountains. They all look to the south. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, through you for the senator, yes, sir, that's true.
Mr. Co-Chairman, did you have a question, or go ahead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think those windows there do look towards the mountains. It's the residence rooms that look to the south. Am I correct?
Well, these actually face more, this one actually faces more, I'm going to get this wrong. Yeah, north-south
North, doesn't it?
rather than east-west.
Okay.
Now, facility number, or cottage number 1 has an excellent view for the residents of the mountains.
Okay. Thank you.
They're kind of set up, Director Shepherd, in a semicircle up there is kind of what you're referring to. And in this particular building, I think kind of perpendicular to the mountains, but some of the backside, I think, gets a pretty good view, so. Anything else, committee? Okay, please proceed.
All right, next slide.
Yeah.
And with this, I'd like to Franz or to Stefan.
Good morning, Chairman Landon. Good morning, Chairman Burkhart, and members of the committee. My name is Franz Fuchs. I'm a policy analyst with the Department of Health. I know Director Johansson is joining us from Thermopolis remotely. I'm mostly here to look pretty. He's here to take the hard questions, but I'm happy to take any questions and sort of brief these slides, unless the director wants to jump in and do it himself. We also should have Ryan Scranton, I believe, should be online to take some of the construction-related questions. We certainly have, some surface knowledge of that at the department, but, he's the construction manager who's been spearheading this project for some time. So, but yeah, you can see over here the overall, picture is a bit delayed. We are still, so there's a bunch of wickets that need to be met really before the facility can open officially. There are a bunch of different players in here. It's a little more complicated than the normal nursing home. We have, as normal, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which requires a certification process. We have the state healthcare licensing and survey, which actually looks at the facility itself. And then we also have the VA. So there's 3 different kind of surveys that have to be coordinated and whether they're licensure or certification processes that have to be run. We have done submitted the documentation required for CMS to begin their survey, but they will do a preliminary survey likely when we have initial residents, and then do a complete survey once the facility is largely occupied. And then same thing with the VA. They come in once the facility is largely occupied and look at things. And that's the certification really is for the payment piece, for getting the Medicare, Medicaid, and VA revenue. So as far as revenue side, that won't come until those certifications are complete.
Mr. Fuchs, on that front, what are they looking for? When CMS comes in, it just seems like that's quite a bit of bureaucracy, and I guess that goes with the program, but what can you tell us about what they'll be looking for?
Chairman Landon, I don't have a too detailed understanding of what the certification involves, but it's a lot of it life safety type related things, looking at minimum staffing, looking at fire safety, health, those kind of things. Very similar to what the state does, and they probably take a lot of that work, but they're going to be looking at, do you have a minimum data set, which is sort of the data collection for CMS, is that in place? Do you have a coordinator? Do you have all these minimum kind of positions? That's my understanding of kind of what they're looking at, and that's sort of required for them to begin, obviously paying for the care of those residents.
Mr. Fuchs, by the way, I do want to send out an appreciation for Director Johansson for joining us via Zoom this morning. Please, Director, don't hesitate to jump in on anything. And if nothing else, committee will go back to Mr. Fuchs. Go ahead. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Absolutely. Director, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate your flexibility letting me join virtually from Thermopolis today. I'm actually visiting our long-term care facilities here in Thermopolis, in Basin later today, and we'll be at the Veterans Home tomorrow in Buffalo. I'll echo Colonel Shepard's comments. We appreciate everybody's attendance and participation in our dedication ceremony a week or two ago. It was a beautiful day and a very good turnout, and we're excited to have another step in the process of opening this great facility. As Mr. Fuchs mentioned, all of this has been an exercise in timing, and so with our anticipated completion of the full completion of the project to be in the mid-November timeframe on the construction side, I know we're at 98-99% substantial completion now. Everything kind of has to line up in this cascading order. And that's why you have seen a little bit of delay in our recruiting activities for staff, because until the building is complete and until we have our certification from the federal government, we don't want to bring all of the direct care staff on too early, where they would have been sitting for a couple of months with nothing to do, with no training in place, et cetera. We have just in the past couple of weeks, we've made a lot of progress on our leadership positions. We're close on a director of nursing, on an MDS coordinator, and activities position has been filled. So we are making progress there, and if not this week, then next week we will start posting all of our direct care positions like our CNAs and others. And we hope that that lines up with what Franz mentioned that we're hoping to see in this order of events. We have our state license that's been completed. We have submitted our bureaucratic forms to CMS, and those have come back mostly approved. There were a few details that needed to be changed in there. And then, as Franz mentioned, there's two processes that we'll be going through in the next month or two. And one is our provisional survey, which can happen before major occupancy and services take place. And we're very optimistic that will go smooth. And then, as Franz mentioned, later, once we have a certain amount of residents in the buildings, then we will have a full CMS certification survey. And Chairman Landon, to your question, that survey is really pretty comprehensive, and it's a little bit different than the state life safety survey, which, as I mentioned, has been done already. It looks at those life safety and physical plant issues, but also all of the conditions of participation with Medicare and Medicaid. And that can be both on the physical plant side and on the service delivery side. So it's a pretty comprehensive survey. Every nursing home and long-term care facility goes through it. And like I said, I'm optimistic that we won't have any major issues there. But it is kind of an exercise in timing. I will update the last bullet point that you see there on the slides. I believe as of a couple of days ago, our wait list is currently at 38. And it's growing. So we have a lot of interest in the facility, both with current residents of the domiciliary, as well as folks all over the state who have reached out. We have a process in place to make sure that we're taking those in order. And then once we have our provisional certification from CMS, part of what comes with that is a complete application packet that all of those individuals on the waiting list can receive. There's a process for them to have a functional assessment to determine what level of care they meet, if they meet this level of care. And again, we wanted to have all of this in place back in August and September, but we all know, and I know your committee has received updates, that there's been a few delays, and those are understandable. But we're in a good position in my estimation to begin bringing residents in within the December timeframe, potentially into the first part of the new year. And Mr. Chairman, I will close, as everybody knows, across all of my facilities around the state and health and human services in general, staffing and workforce is just a huge challenge. That we will face that challenge, staffing this facility. There's no doubt about it. And all of my facilities happen to be in small towns across Wyoming. I think we do a good job working with the labor market that we have in those places, but it is a challenge. And so we're trying to do everything we can to promote the new facility. It is going to be a wonderful place to work and to provide care, but I don't want to understate to the committee the challenges that we have across our entire enterprise in bringing on workforce. And any hospital, nursing home, assisted living facility that you talk to will tell you the same thing. It's an incredible challenge right now, but I'm very optimistic that here in the next 1 to 2 months, you'll see a big change at that facility, with certification and licensure being put in place, with staff coming on board, and ultimately with residents coming over. So it's a long time coming, but we're excited. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, and members of the committee, happy to stand for any questions.
Director Johansson, thank you. Really appreciate you zooming in with us, and appreciate your work. Committee, any questions for the director? Senator Anderson.
I'm not sure if it's for the director or for Franz, but I went back and looked at the original request for facilities and personnel, and I believe that was 44 was the request originally, and it had a director, food prep, and it had a medical doctor in it. And I remember the VA telling us that they could not be shared. They could not be shared. And we had a facility that was going to be real close to our hospital that had all those personnel that we could have shared easily, but they said we couldn't share them. Now I'm hearing that the director might be a shared position. And I see on your list, no food prep. And all these patients are not preparing their own food. They have to have food prep for them. So I'm assuming that you're sharing the food prep of the veterans facility that's already there. The doctor, I don't know where the doctor's coming from. I guess that's from, maybe that's a shared facility too. So I'm really concerned that this has changed a lot since we made the proposal in the beginning that everyone wanted to go to Buffalo. I noticed the CNAs was 22 and now it's down to 20. I'm concerned that the veterans are not going to have the care that they should be having. I'm also curious, a question of where those 34 or 38 people are coming from, if it's mostly from the domiciliary that's there, or they're saying that it's all over the state. I'm curious as to where those guys actually are requesting to come from.
So,
Mr. Chairman.
who wants to take that? Director Johansson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Anderson, a very good question. As we worked the staffing needs of the facility, that was done in conjunction with my office and consultants for the level of care we were opening. There were some modifications over time, as you mentioned. I believe our ultimate budget request for those positions came in at 35, and you're right. We did determine that it would be most efficient to use one director position for both the domiciliary and the nursing home. To your question about the food service, 2 points I would make there, Senator Anderson. One, we will leverage the central kitchen at least for a time at the domiciliary. But as you mentioned, the residents in the skilled nursing facility will not be preparing their own food. The model is different, as you all may have seen who toured the facility when we did the ribbon cutting. There are centrally located smaller kitchens in each cottage. And in addition to, bulk items that might come over from the central kitchen, the CNA, what we call the Shabazz model as part of the greenhouse, will be involved in food prep. Now, again, not kind of an industrial type food prep, because there will be needs that we will leverage our bigger central kitchen at the veterans home and our food storage there. But the greenhouse model and the Shabazzes will be involved in the cottages in preparing food. So I think, Senator Anderson, with the staffing that you see on the slide here, that we will have what we need. The staff to client ratio at these cottages will be sufficient for the veterans needs that get served in this facility. And then I might be blanking on your last question, Senator Anderson, if you wouldn't mind repeating it.
Mr. Chairman, the last question was, where are those residents coming from that you've got 38 or 34, or however many you have at this time?
Director, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the clarification, Senator Anderson. So right now, and don't quote me on the numbers, but I'll give you a rough estimate and can certainly follow up with the specifics. Out of those 38 or so, my understanding is that 8 or 9 are residents of the current domiciliary. So the remaining 30 or so have been individuals from different communities all over the state who have reached out, asked about the facility, what the process will be, and we have had our team and our social workers, et cetera, on the phone with them and letting them know, that we'll put them on the waiting list and certainly send them an application once we have those certification measures in place.
Senator
Chairman,
Anderson, go ahead.
follow up.
And then we'll go to Senator McEwen.
In hearing this 2 years ago in committee, we had a lot of concern out of the city of Buffalo that the nursing home and the hospital were going to lose employees to the state. And the state reassured the nursing home people that were there in the audience and making testimony, and the hospital personnel that were there, that they would not poach their employees. In other words, the state would not pay more and have better benefits than the local people had. so they would take their employees. The nursing home guy testified that, in fact, if they poached his CNAs, he would have to shut down his nursing home. So I want to caution us and ask you to make sure that you're not doing that, that you're bringing in people. That was one of the benefits to Buffalo and Johnson County was they were going to bring employees into the city, not poach the ones that were there. So is that how we're getting our employees, or are we in fact paying better and better benefits and taking away from the locals?
Director, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, it's a great question and an issue that I'm very privy to and serious about. I will say at the outset, it's almost impossible to avoid the kind of competition that happens between state, local government, private sector in these small towns when it comes to health and human services. So it kind of ebbs and flows over the past couple of years, especially with the pandemic. My facilities have lost a lot of staff, nurses, CNAs, other positions to private facilities that were paying more, offering sign-on bonuses, offering more flexible shifts, et cetera. And then sometimes, Senator Anderson, as you know, depending on the facility and depending on the provider, sometimes the state positions are more competitive or higher in those towns. I certainly, as the director of the Department of Health, want to strike the right balance where we are not putting the other parts of the healthcare continuum at risk of shutting down. And some of that discussion you'll see unfold when we begin presenting our budget later this year in terms of what we think we need to do in the long-term care reimbursement space. And I certainly won't step in front of the governor on any of those decisions, which are too early right now. But it's tough. In Evanston and Lander and Buffalo and Basin, these are tough labor markets to compete in. I will mention, Senator Anderson, and won't dime anybody out, but healthcare providers in the Johnson County area very recently have increased their pay, and I think some of that is probably a little bit of a check and balance against the state, getting ready to open a new facility. We will do everything we can to make sure that as we bring on staff, we're not putting other providers at risk of closure or imminent risk of that kind of financial distress or service distress. But I really don't want to candy coat it. It's tough to compete for the same labor pool in these types of places. But you certainly know my perspective on that. Healthcare continuum in Wyoming is much bigger than just my facilities, so we want to be sensitive to it.
Thank you, Director. Let's go to Senator McEwen, and then we'll go to Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two quick questions. One, will the staff that you're hiring all be required to take a COVID vaccination? And are you finding that's hard to recruit people with that requirement? Thank you.
Director,
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator McEwen, yes, not at the domiciliary, but at the skilled nursing component, once that comes online and gets certified. Currently, as you know, CMS does require individuals who work in a skilled nursing facility setting to be vaccinated or exempted, either through a religious or a medical exemption. So we will, unless that policy at the federal level changes, we will have to put that in place. And we certainly, mention that in our recruiting, that our staff have to comply, as any nursing home staff around the state do, with all CMS regulations. To your question, Senator McEwen, I think, yes, that does hamper recruitment. We've had those discussions with the Labor Committee. I've had those discussions with CMS and the federal government in a place like Wyoming that, in addition to the sort of personal pushback on a policy like that certain individuals have, it does, any of those restrictions do have a hampering on recruitment. I can't tell you right now, Senator McEwen, if the federal government will change that policy, but I can tell you that we've had discussions with them and the governor's office to look at COVID policies across the board as we do find ourselves in kind of a different time of the pandemic of which of those federal regulations do they plan to relax. But currently it is in place and will be a requirement for the skilled nursing facility.
Okay, follow up, Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-up. Do we have a plan or an interest to push back against the federal government on the vaccine requirements? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Director.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, as you know, the governor did join a variety of lawsuits with other states on some of those requirements. They did not really pan out in those states' favor. In terms of a plan of pushing back, again, in the spirit of not candy coating things, we at our facilities have implemented those policies and protocols to comply with the regulations, because some of my facilities are very heavily federally funded and serve an incredibly vulnerable safety net population. In terms of our process, Senator McEwen, we have had good compliance, whether that's with the vaccination or with exemptions, similar to what you saw with the military department's presentation. It's tough, but I think our plan and the processes that we have in place right now both strike the right balance between the infection control that we know we need, especially for the vulnerable populations that we serve, and the ability either through medical or religious personal belief exemptions to make those exceptions.
Yeah. Representative Stiver, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is going off Senator Anderson's question. During the labor health meeting, there was discussion that you guys were paying RNs, LPNs, and CNAs a lot more than the local facilities can, and there was a problem with that. Are these positions going to be within that 9-month contract you're doing?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Stivar, no, these positions, so that issue is really because of emergency and critical staffing levels. We did advertise temporary nurse positions at a higher rate, because we have units at the state hospital and the Life Resource Center that are dark. We're unable to bring patients in because of the critically low staffing levels. These positions that you see here, Representative Stivar, are all permanent classified positions and will fit into that state salary range. Again, it's a back and forth with what the state pays versus what private facilities can pay. It really is dependent on the provider. Some have different business models, better balance sheets, et cetera. But I'll reiterate again, our intention with any of our recruiting is not to put any private facility in the healthcare continuum in jeopardy. However, we do have a task from the state, from the legislature, to operate all 5 of these facilities, and we need to do that. So it's a delicate balance, but we'll certainly do our best to strike that balance in the right way.
Okay, committee, we're going to try to move on real quickly here. We're getting behind already. One more question, and we'll go to the director and let Franz and the director finish up. Okay, thank you.
It's a close-ended question, quick question. Do you see, on the topic, do you see price gouging between the competing agencies for that healthcare?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I'll answer that briefly. It's a big issue. I will use the term price gouging, but mostly related to what we call agency labor. Folks know that a lot as traveling nurses, but these agency companies that take place nurses on a 3, 4, 5 month shift in whatever facility, that market has exploded over the past 3 years, mostly driven by the pandemic. And so when you see traveling nurses, what we pay for those contracts or those traveling nurses is $70, $80, $100, $125 an hour, $150 an hour, depending on the setting. It's very difficult, whether you're a state facility, a county-owned facility, or a private sector facility, to compete with that. And then with your low staffing levels, sometimes you're forced into a position where you have to execute and use the contracts like that. So it's really debilitating. I think the market nationally has been gouged by certain companies, but we've seen signs, especially in the past 6 months, of stabilization. We are seeing more applications on the CNA and nurse side for our positions. So I have a little bit of optimism that is flattening out, but no doubt about it, it's been very tough both for the public and private sector facilities to compete with that.
Thank you, Director. I'm going to offer an opportunity for you to offer anything final on the skilled nursing center up in Buffalo, and then we'll have an opportunity to get back to Director Shepherd and the general on the agenda. So take it away, Director. Final thoughts, or let's finish up on skilled nursing.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Very briefly, I will just once again reiterate my thanks to this committee and the legislature for their support in getting us to where we are with this facility. The challenges are real, but for those of you that have been there, it's a wonderful place. It's a beautiful facility that's going to serve the veterans of Wyoming that need that level of care very well. We certainly appreciate the confidence in our ability to execute that, and you have my word that we'll work, especially over the coming months, to get this facility fully operational and ultimately cash flow positive, which is an exciting part of this model. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and appreciate the flexibility to testify remotely today.
Absolutely, Director. Thank you for taking the time, and good luck up in the basin today. Appreciate all the work you're doing, and we'll stay in touch. A lot of policy concerns coming up on your neck of the woods. So, Franz, final thoughts?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything to add from what the director spoke to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to talk here today.
Thank you. And Director Shepherd, I'm going to come back to you for anything final on.
I think we're good, Mr.
Commission.
Chairman. Next slide. Yeah, we're back to the general.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Before we get away from that, Ms. Legursky, I'm looking back at you. Would you like to provide any thoughts on the Buffalo facility, or do you want to save your comments for a little bit later this morning? Okay, thank you, Eric. Appreciate you being here. Thanks. General, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, this is the following is the report on sexual assault, sexual harassment within the Wyoming National Guard. If you all recall, during the work of the last session, really made this a requirement to brief every year. This particular presentation that I'm about to brief to you is I presented to Governor Gordon last Friday, and we finalized the report in accordance with the law on Monday, the 31st. So let me take 1 second here while this gets handed out to everybody.
Hey, committee, is everybody all set? We have what we need to have here? Okay. Take it away, Jim.
All right, let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to provide an executive summary on the next slide. Go through some of the things, the requirements that we are provided in the reports about demographics. Go through equal employment opportunities, sexual assault, climate surveys, Inspector General sensing sessions, any congressional complaints, actions taken since the last report, and really what we're going to do going ahead. If we could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to pause just for a moment to allow the committee to sort of review this real quick, and then I'll try to sum up the executive summary, but let me give the committee a minute to sort of digest this.
Okay, General, I think.
All
you
right,
can
if
take
I
it
were to
away.
sum up the executive summary very quickly, you know, the CDC will tell you that about every 68 seconds, someone in the United States is sexually assaulted. If we were to bring that a little bit closer to Wyoming, if you look at Wyoming, the average forcible rape per 100,000 in the United States is 38. Wyoming sits at 57, the top 10 in forcible rapes in the US. The number one is Alaska at 146, and the very lowest is New Jersey, I think, at 14. If we even bring it a little closer, if we take a study done at the University of Wyoming in 2018, they surveyed their members of their student body and really came up with almost half of the women really about a third of the women at the University of Wyoming has experienced some sort of sexual assault during their lives. That's pretty much in line, maybe a little bit less than what you'll see nationwide. It's a systemic problem in the country at the moment. I'll tell you that the victims that we have in the military department kind of follow along in that same line. What we look at is most of them are female, between the ages of 18 and 24. They tend to be acquainted with their perpetrator. Alcohol doesn't seem to be as big as of a impact as it was the last time we looked at this. It's only about 43%, down almost half from the other ones. The perpetrator and the victims tend to be of the same age, if it's a military member of equal rank. In the Wyoming National Guard, we had two perpetrators this last year. One was investigated by local law enforcement, and the case was closed with no charges filed. The other occurred at a local bar, and we're still waiting local law enforcement. It was unwanted contact, and we're still waiting local law enforcement to get that completed, that investigation completed, so that we can address it. There's probably three things my goal as the Adjutant General. One is that we have no perpetrators in the Wyoming National Guard. Number two is those victims that we do have, feel free to report and receive services from the Wyoming Military Department and the Department of Defense without fear of any retaliation or embarrassment or anything like this. And lastly, our focus is going to go on, continues to go on prevention. If you look at where the resources the Department of Defense has placed in this area, it's all been on the side of taking care of victims, which is great. That's where it is, where it should be. But recently, given the incidents at Fort Hood that happened several years ago, Department of Defense has come online and say, hey, listen, we really need to get ahead of this. And now we're put some dollars towards prevention. And I'll talk about Michelle's work and the work of the team as we get going forward. So if I were to sum up the executive summary, that would be it. Are there any questions before I kind of go into the components of the report?
Any questions, committee? Okay, please proceed, General.
All right, just really quickly, the next one is demographics. I'll let you take a look at it very quickly, but I think what is probably the most notable here is the Wyoming Military Department has roughly 731 females in it, give or take, on any point in time. If you look at even at the lowest level of sexual assault that you would see, at a quarter of that, that's still a tremendous amount of folks that are experiencing sexual assault. And frankly, it's shocking, and we got to get after it as a society and as a country, as a state, as we go forward. So the next slide really talks about equal employment opportunity. I'll go through that. We had one formal complaint of a hostile work environment. It is appealed to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. We had 4 informal complaints. One was withdrawn by the complainant, and there's 3 hostile work environments, non-sexual in nature, and that's filed with the state Equal Employment Opportunity Manager right now. The reports were not sexual in nature. One was related to a COVID vaccine mandate, and 2 were regarding with their relationship with the supervisor. As I said, one was subsequently dropped. We had 4 informal concerns brought to the scene since the 1st of August, all resolved before reaching the complaint process. As I take a look at this, really no trends along racism, sexism, those corrosives that we look at. Didn't see anything on the equal opportunity lines along those lines, just to give you a heads up.
Go ahead.
The next slide is.
Representative Baker has a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In general, would you just briefly address the aspect of underreporting and what your feeling is how we can move forward to maybe eliminate that as much as possible? I know that open doors and everything like that, but I know that there's an aspect of underreporting here that maybe isn't really addressed. Could you just maybe speak to that briefly?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Baker, just a clarification, are we talking in terms of equal employment or sexual assault or all of it? Is there a particular piece?
The sexual assault portion of it, because I just, people may not be comfortable no matter what we do to try to bring these things to light. What can we do to maybe shine the light a little bit more and make people a little more comfortable?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Baker, I'm going to get to that discussion, and if you allow, I'll continue to do that and bring that up when we get there. I don't want to, if you want me to address it now, I can, but I am going to talk about exactly
General,
what
we'll
you.
come back to the representative later if you don't get to it, but I think we probably will. So thank you, Representative. Good question. Please proceed, General.
All right. Last year, we had 16 sexual assaults reported in the Wyoming Military Department. 9 of them are what we call restricted reports, which means that law enforcement in the chain of command aren't notified of the details of it, but they are allowed to receive victim services, and that's really largely the biggest difference. The unrestricted reports, local law enforcement and the chain of command are notified. Of the 7 unrestricted reports we had last year, 4 of them occurred in the training year of 22. The other 3 occurred in previous years, but were reported in 22. Of those 7 unrestricted reported, these are sort of the trends that we came up, and I kind of talked to you about that. 6 of the 7 of the victims were females from between 18 and 24. 6 of the 7 was a male perpetrator on a female victim, although we did have 1 male on male. 86% were equal in rank to one another. 71% were acquainted with the perpetrator. 71% occurred after duty hours and away from a duty location. 4 of those incidents occurred in Wyoming, and 3 were involved in alcohol. No assaults occurred during a drill weekend or during or after any official military-sponsored function. As I said, only 2 of these were alleged perpetrators from the Wyoming Military Department. The rest were not. And I think that's all I have on that particular case.
Okay, thank you, General. Please proceed.
Yep. To Representative Baker's question, and I'll get to it now. When I talk about what we're doing command action, sir, that's where I'll address what you were talking about here when we get to it as we go forward. Unit climate survey results is the next one. Had no unit climate survey conducted this last year. We really do that every 2 years. Our next unit climate survey will happen this spring of 23, and we'll do once again another organizational DEOC survey like we did 2 years ago. So really no new unit climate survey results would I bring to this report. The next slide, though, really did talk about Inspector General sensing sessions. As I think many of you know, you understand the Inspector General process. That is an active duty Title 10 person and an NCO that are outside of the chain of command of the Wyoming Military Department to really serve as an ombudsman for soldiers and airmen and employees that want to bring issues forward outside of the chain of command and to make sure that their issues are taken care of. I do ask our Inspector General to look at some things, though, as they go out on the focus from us. Obviously, I'm very interested in any instances of sexual assault and harassment, but any racism, extremism, any of those things. This past year, the Inspector General really visited 8 different units, surveyed over 305 service members in these sensing sessions. These sensing sessions are face-to-face, in small group, and with the Title 10 folks without the chain of command involved. really, if we go to the next slide, the trends that we found this year were a little bit different than we found 2 years ago. If you recall, 2 years ago in the report, I told you there was some sort of ambient sexual assault or sexual comments in nature. There was potentially some jokes, that sort of thing that was occurring in units. We didn't get that since this time. That seemed to have cleared up somewhat. Really, most of our concerns were pretty mundane. Pay, bonuses, lack of communication up and down channels, full-time resourcing, those kinds of things. Inspector General really was very clear with me and said, we really didn't, nobody brought forward to us any of those things that you ask us to take a look at in terms of religion, ethnicity, racism, extremism, sexual misconduct, any of those things. So that's one data point that we look forward going.
Question, Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have there been any indications in these sensing efforts related to, a lot of our Guard members are from outside Wyoming. And has there been any sensing information gathered related to that in terms of concern by any of our Guard members, in terms of their career advancement, environment, those sort of things?
General?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, I'm going to take a little bit liberty of kind of trying to tie it to a discussion you had previously that, and what that was there was some concern of folks that maybe are coming outside of state are given, or maybe less constrained, that they are given a step up in the career path was the discussion of this. That's pretty much the opposite of what I hear from most of the folks. Most of the folks are. It's been the other way, that you have to have been a member of the Wyoming Guard for a while to be part of the system in order to go up in rank. So I haven't heard much of it, but the one instance you talked about was almost the antithesis of what I've heard in other ways. So I'll say that.
Okay, please proceed, General. We got to keep going on this one.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Representative Stibar's got a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the bonus issues that was discussed, is that bonuses not being paid that were promises?
Mr. Chairman? Representative Stivar, it's mostly the mechanics of it. The system that paid the bonuses was contracted by the Department of Defense. That contractor really failed to live up to what they were supposed to be doing on bonuses. So it was very difficult. They had to go back to a manual process to pay bonuses to soldiers and airmen. And that really caused a bit of a problem in terms of them getting it timely. So it was a system issue, as you were, and it took a long time for the Department of the Army to sort of come around to a fix on that, to be straight up.
Okay, follow up,
So that's
Representative
been
Stibar.
fixed, sir?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, Representative Stiver, the contractor's back on, and that has been fixed. I'm aware of 2 bonus issues that we're working through in the organization right now, so it's getting better, but I would not tell you that it's certainly completely fixed.
Okay, thank you, General. Let's keep moving on through. We're going to keep going, and then we'll go to questions after the General finishes up here.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
All right, sir, the next slide, really, congressional complaints have received no congressional gubernatorial requests on sexual harassment, discrimination, or assault in 22. Let me go quickly through the actions taken since 21. I did request an external review of our policies and processes in the Equal Opportunity Program from the governor. The governor assigned directors Bach and Cooley to do that. They are wrapping up their report at the moment, and I think we'll hear something in the near future once they've briefed the governor. We did hire a new state equal employment opportunity manager outside of the organization. It's a retired Navy individual, came out of us from Japan and started in August. So that's been good for us. He's got a lot of experience from his active duty career and is doing a great job for us. Probably the biggest thing that I would tell you is we were allocated some positions from National Guard Bureau to hire what they call a prevention workforce. Prevention workforce really gets after the corrosives I've talked about: sexual assault, sexual harassment, suicide, and extremism, racism, that sort of thing. So those resources came to us in late third quarter, early fourth quarter. We've hired our prevention manager. It's Michelle Mulberry, as I introduced. And we also have the additional 2 personnel, which should begin to start work here in November. Pretty excited about this program. As I said, this helps us get after the prevention piece of this, where before we didn't have the resources to do that. As you recall, the committee was very, and the legislature was very insistent and helpful in providing us resources, authorizing us a position to go to workforce services to help us with the EOC investigations. That MOU's been signed, that person has been hired and trained, and we're already working through with the Department of Workforce Services for any complaints and that sort of thing on that side. So that's gone very well, and I do want to express my thanks to Director Cooley and the team for being so quick on getting that done.
General, those positions that we're hiring, bless you, do we get some federal help on those?
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly. They're federally funded.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah. Let me just go through very quickly the command actions as we took a look at what we saw out of the survey. We're going to continue the annual reporting. That's good for us. It makes us take a look at this every year timely, and I think it's important to provide the governor and the committee what's going on in the military department along these lines. We do have some sexual harassment data reporting gaps that we've got to get after. As I said, we have about 7 different types of employees in the military department. Each one of those has a different sort of reporting mechanism. We got to get those together and make it easy one-stop shopping to get that done, so we get that after. We're going to do identify trends quarterly rather than just annually once a year and put those out. We're going to do that quarterly and make sure that our commanders and our senior enlisted leaders know what's going on trend-wise with the sexual assault out there. I am going to ask for staff assistance visit from the National Guard Bureau in FY24. I want to give Michelle and her team about a year to get established and get working. And then I want to bring somebody in from National Guard Bureau to come and give us assessment of our program and let us know how we're doing on that. We're going to continually annually review agency policies. Normally those policies are only done when commanders change, but we're going to do it annually just to make sure we stay on top of it. And we're going to do the ongoing review of closed cases. Again, thanks to your work last year, we now are able to receive closed cases from, once cases are closed, from law enforcement, and our intent is to learn from those as we get them done, so that continues to go forward. Next slide, please. Right now, there's no requirement for all state employees to receive sexual assault, sexual harassment training unless you're a supervisor. And we're going to change that. We're going to have everybody do it every year just to help really identify, to help in those situations where an assault could occur, another set of eyes there will be helpful to us. Each of our 2 services do the mandatory training for what they have to do. Wyoming Military Department is going to go just a little bit beyond that. We're going to establish what's called buddy aid training. Buddy aid actually came out of the South Dakota Guard, but we were one of the early adopters of the program, and it's starting to become ubiquitous across the nation and the National Guard. This buddy aid training or bystander training, again, is going to help our folks identify situations where sexual assault could occur and how do you help them, and how do you help them and how do you prevent it. Really going to focus that, though, on our 18 to 24 years, our student flight folks, and our, which is those that haven't gone to basic training yet, and our RSP program on the Army side. So that's where that's going to be. So that's going to be additive training to that. We're also going to add what they call level training out of our peer influencer training in addition to that. Level training sort of helps an individual identify maybe some attributes that they have that don't contribute to the society, that maybe, hey, I act a certain way that I shouldn't. It helps you sort of identify that to try to get perpetrators identified before they become a perpetrator. So again, we're going to focus that at our youngest level. We noticed last year, and it happened much less this year. I'm cautiously optimistic. That's because the training we did when our folks were leaving the state, that they were being sexually assaulted. So we put a lot of emphasis on grooming tactics for people to understand, hey, when a perpetrator is trying to groom you for a sexual assault, what does that look like? How does that feel? And so we're going to continue with those kind of trainings as well, because it would seem to have a positive effect on what's going on out there. And then really, I'm going to provide a one-page talker to all the commanders about this annual report, that they can talk to their soldiers, airmen, and employees about sexual assault, what we're seeing in the military department and what we're not seeing. So that's really the piece going forward. Sir, that's really sort of the summation of the sexual assault report. I'm really ready to address Representative Baker's sort of concerns about this. I expect sexual assault reporting to go up. It's gone up significantly since even last year. Buddy aid training, about every time we do buddy aid training, an individual will come up afterwards and say, hey, listen, this happened to me. Sometimes it doesn't result in a sexual assault report, but sometimes it does result in us establishing a case. So I see reporting going up. I think we want reporting to go up, knowing what we think we know about sexual assault out there in society writ large. Our job now is to make sure that when it's a restricted report, it's kept confidential. We don't give that information to chains of command and law enforcement, that we keep the confidence of our victims when they come ask to us. And then for our unrestricted, I think it's incumbent on us that we take action every time. If they come to us, law enforcement investigates, that we have the ability to take an action against the perpetrator when they do that. As I said, we're already starting to see reporting go up. I think that's a good thing. I think our job now is to make sure that we continue to do that. Did that help get you there, Representative Baker?
Representative Baker, does that help?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In general, I appreciate the information, and I appreciate what you're doing and the efforts that you're putting forth. Do you know, is there any evidence to support that that initial contact, that females may feel more comfortable reporting to another female?
General?
Mr. Chairman, I don't. I believe, though, most of our victim advocates are female. Our SARC on the Army side is female, on the air side is male, and then obviously our prevention minister is female. So I think we have enough there, but I'll check, Representative Baker. I don't know offhand if they're more comfortable doing that or not. That's one I owe you.
General, a couple of things. One, I just wanted to acknowledge, committee, the work that we've done over the last 2 years, and tip my hat to all of you, because I think the work we did last year and where we arrived has allowed our military department to carry forward and bring us this report. I think one of the best things we can do yearly is to keep an eye on what's going on out there. The general's absolutely right. What we've got going on in society isn't good enough. And so the military department inherits what we've got going on in society. But hopefully we're doing better. I know we're doing better based on this report, General, and really appreciate all the work that's gone in just in these last few months to put a better framework in place. Committee, I'm inclined to move on. We've got a busy morning, but if there's any other questions, let's fire them out real quick and we'll move on from this. Okay. Representative Romero Martinez.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to share my experience, and I'll just put it out, to the general public. I'm fine with it. Well, I served in the Wyoming Air National Guard from 98 to 2003, right between the attack on the Twin Towers there. And I'm kind of known for this here too. I always have some holy reminder on my desk. When I served in the Guard in the 153rd Communications Squadron, I had a picture this small, the size of Jesus with a maroon background, and I was told you couldn't have it there. When I went to EO, they said, well, they kind of just brushed it under the rug. I know some of my comrades and colleagues remember that. I just wanted to make just a point that these things happen, and I will digress and just thank you for all the work that you do, because I know we have a long day ahead of us, and a lot of solutions, I'm sure, are being worked on as we.
Representative, if you've got a question, please fire it out there.
To that point, what's being done to ensure people of faith can have that freedom of speech and expression on their desk?
General?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Romero Martinez, I'm not tracking any, of that issue, to be quite honest with you. I've not heard of any instances where that has become an issue. So I will just take it as homework for me, sir, to check it out, because I'm not tracking it. Chris, would you say anything different?
Thank you. Mr. Smith, good morning. Yeah, good to see you.
Mr. Chairman, hi. Chris Smith, Senior Counsel for the Wyoming Military Department. We hear stories such as what Representative Romero Martinez experienced in the past. I like to think as an organization we've gotten well beyond that. I'll just say I'm a committed Christian. I have a Bible on my desk. Nobody's said a word to me about it. Those conversations, I think we all in the military, we get briefed on this fairly regularly about freedom of expression and freedom of religion. We have chapel services during drills. I think whatever the representative had experienced, I think we're well beyond that. I like to think that anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative, hopefully we're getting better as we go along on all fronts. General, thanks for that. I like the fact that that we're going to periodically have a conversation about this. That's the only way we can figure out if there's something we can do a little bit better along the way. But appreciate the work of you and all of your staff to get up to speed on some of this. Let's take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back to the Wyoming Challenge. Okay, committee, 10 minutes. failed to mention before we took our break that we would come back for some public comment. Before we do that, I want to give Ms. Legursky an opportunity to come up on behalf of the executive branch, the governor's office. Again, Ms. Legursky, I appreciate you being here this morning, and regarding this topic that we just got through discussing, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, members of the committee. Just again, for the record, Erica Legursky, I'm a senior policy advisor for Governor Gordon. Just wanted to come up real quickly and let you know, as General Porter had mentioned, he has briefed the governor on this report that you guys were just given today. He also had a brief conversation with Director Cooley and Director Bach with regards to the report that they're going to do. They have completed their investigation with the military department. They are working on a finalized report and told us that they would have that to us in about 2 to 3 months. The plan is to make that report public so that you guys would be able to view that. So we wanted to thank the military department for their cooperation in that, and then Director Bach and Director Cooley for their work on that report. Similar to what some of the conversations that we had, the reporting that General Porter had mentioned, making sure that folks know how to report and are they comfortable with reporting that, that's a big thing, and making sure that those victims have the services that they need. The EEOC position that was approved last session and given to Workforce Services has been helpful. And again, we wanted to thank Director Cooley for her help on that. The Guard and Workforce Services have been working well together, and so we do think that that's a step in the right direction. So just wanted to thank you for your work on that as well.
So, Ms. Legursky, regarding the EEO position, that is a position that we can take advantage of from other angles, is it not? If I remember correctly, it's not just solely dedicated to military.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Okay. Committee, anything for the governor's office or Ms. Legursky? Thank you very much, Ms. Legursky. We'll come back to you a little later, perhaps, so appreciate it. Okay, we're going to go to public comment on the reports provided by our military department thus far. Do we have any public comment? Yeah, please come forward and state your name for the record. I think you know exactly how this works, and I would ask that you keep on point this morning because we've got a very busy agenda, but welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. My name is Marilyn Burton. I am Precinct 49 Committee Woman-elect. I get a vote in January. My public comments today are going to be under another section. I just wanted to say really quickly, I'm just really encouraged by all the work that has been done. I appreciate the changes at the Department of Defense level based upon things at Fort Hood. I appreciate the efforts in the funding from National Guard Bureau to help agencies, guard agencies across the Guard across the country. And I was very impressed with General Porter when he did a lot of research and he did outside comparisons with civilians and the University of Wyoming and all of those things. And sexual assault and sexual harassment is a problem in our community and just across the nation and around the world. And so the Guard is a microcosm, and I just appreciate all the efforts of everything that everyone has done. And I'm not afraid of increased reports. I don't necessarily think that means increased sexual assaults. I agree with the general. It just means that maybe people are trusting the system more, and then we can take care of victims. And so I think it's better when they come forward.
Ms. Burton, thank you, and thanks for your advocacy, and good luck on the political front. You know, you jumped into an arena that many of us might have tried to talk you out of that. But, anyway.
Well, I started at the lowest level, so we'll see.
Right.
I have to do something with my 21 years of military leadership experience.
There you go. Thank you very much for being here.
All right, thank you.
Okay, General, take it away. We want to talk about the Wyoming Challenge Academy.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, let me go to the slides if we could. And what I thought I would approach this is just try to give a sense of the timeline and the decisions And the circumstances that occurred has led to the decision to close the Challenge Academy. So people have kind of an understanding of what that looked like. And then obviously I think we'll have some discussion afterwards if we get that. Very quickly, really the 11th of July in 2022, Class 46 began the resident phase. They had 82 cadets and 39 of the 48 authorized full-time staff. One of the vacancies we did have at the time was the deputy director was.
Senator Anderson, oh, excuse me, Heather, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just thought some committee members were searching around for these slides. They are actually at the back. They were at the back of that presentation, the sexual harassment presentation. If you are flipping towards them, I didn't know if people wanted to.
It looks like page 27 of the.
There you go.
Of the
Didn't want
report
people to be
provided by our
searching.
Military Department Committee. Thank you for that, Heather. Appreciate it. Is everybody on board with the slides? Okay. I think we're all set then. Go ahead, General.
All right, sir. One of the vacancies that was included was the deputy director, the number 2 person at the time. That individual had resigned earlier in the summer, late spring, and hadn't been selected yet. If we move on to the 25th and the 29th of July, National Guard Bureau conducted their biannual inspection. The last inspection they had was in 2019. COVID sort of stretched out longer, so this inspection happened in 22. One of the specific findings that you'll see in the report is that WCCA does not meet the cadre to cadet ratio of 1 to 25. Implication of being understaffed exposes WCCA to numerous potential legal liabilities. You can find that in finding number 8, but that's the sort of the first indication that during that inspection. From the 11th through the 15th of September, we had 9 additional positions become what we call operationally vacant. Either they resigned, they went on family medical leave, or they were placed on admin leave pending investigation or something like that. So we, depending on what type of thing that happened, we had an additional 9 people leave over that span of time. I will point out on the 2nd of August, we conducted interviews for the vacant deputy director position. I will tell you that we advertised that position nationwide, but received no applications outside of the Youth Challenge organization. So we selected from within, and Ms. Jamie Potter was selected as the deputy director. If we move on to the 5th of August, we received the formal inspection executive summary from National Guard Bureau following their inspection, and WCCA received an overall unsatisfactory rating. At that time, once we got the details of the report that I believe you have, we started working through that. This was not the first time that the Youth Challenge had failed an inspection. It's something that happens periodically, and we always go through the corrective action process, and that was the intent on this one, is to drive them. As we sat down and discussed the way ahead in the future, Director Moore had certainly spent a lot of time in service to the state. He elected to retire, and so we really started to make plans to select a new director. And the thought was that we'd really do an extensive talent search for a new director, really trying to get after some new ideas, some new innovations. How do we make this work? 'Cause that was the plan. On the 15th of August, given Director Moore's intent to retire, I detailed Colonel Holly Schinnefeld to serve as the acting director. Holly is our full-time chief of the Joint Staff. She's a colonel, and we detailed her up to the Wyoming Cowboy Challenge Academy to start the process of corrective actions along with the current director, and begin laying the groundwork for a talent search for the new director. Soon after she got up there, though, she really started to observe some chronic absenteeism in employees. With the operations section, that's particularly disturbing. That's what we use that's the direct interface with the cadets. It really started to get to be, an average daily rate of 7 folks being out every day out of that 18.
General, those particular positions, just real quickly, military positions or community positions?
Yeah, no, sir. All of these are what are federally reimbursed state positions. So they're state employees. that work for the challenge program.
Thank you.
At the same time, we realized, hey, with this going on, we really needed some augmentation. So I went to Governor Gordon and asked to allow us to put 7 soldiers and airmen on state active duty to help sort of fill the gap to do that. So the governor agreed to do that at about the middle of August. The intent was, can we get this class to the December graduation date if we add these 2 desks? So that was the discussion behind it. If we go forward a couple of weeks, based on sustained vacancies, our inability to recruit and retain staff, and the length of time to onboard and train new personnel, there's quite a bit of training that has to occur to bring somebody to handle at-risk youth. I really made the decision to close WCCA in order to ensure the safety of cadets, and I recommended that to Governor Gordon. The governor concurs. At the time, the day we made that decision, there were 6 cadet team leaders and an additional 4 cadet supervisor positions that were vacant, and that excluded the 2 personnel of the program that called in sick that day. I tell you, the decision wasn't made lightly. I really did feel that the cadets we were not able to assure their safety with the lack of people that we had. I think if I'm not sure how much you remember or about the program. It is a no-contact facility. That means our cadets that are there are there voluntarily, and they can't be restrained. They can't be no hands-on. You can't do so. If a cadet, for example, decides they want to leave, they can. So the TTP is, if a cadet walks out, we'll usually put a cadre member with them, and hopefully if we can get a counselor to be with them. If they leave the confines of the post of Camp Guernsey, local law enforcement can take them and bring them back, but that process can repeat itself. And so it doesn't take too long with having males and females before too many of those happen, and you just don't have much control over the folks. So the governor concurred on the 13th. On the 14th, I traveled to Guernsey, and I informed the staff in the class that WCC would be shut down. And it was just as awful as I anticipated it would be. Employees were shocked, they were hurt, they were angry, they certainly didn't see it coming. The cadets were of the same mind. They were confused, they didn't really understand what was going on. But again, the overriding portion in my mind was we just couldn't get staff to be there and keep them safe. So from the 15th to the 18th, 33 Class 46 cadets were picked up by parents and guardians, and the remaining stayed at Camp Guernsey awaiting transport to other youth challenge programs. This happened very quickly. The staff had about 12 to 13 hours to kind of work through a plan to get the kids, and they did a superb job in some very trying circumstances. If we go to the next page, the 17th to the 23rd, the cadet transition begins. We had 10 cadets go to the Montana Youth Challenge class, 7 cadets to the Idaho Youth Challenge class, and 12 to the California Youth Challenge class. The 33 cadets I mentioned before were returned to their parents and guardians, with 10 of them working credit recovery and 23 working high set. So credit recovery is getting your high school credits recovered to you so that you can now go back to your high school and graduate with your high school cohort. The high set is like a GED. You get an equivalency from high school, and that's what goes on. We also are doing similar to what we did during COVID with some remote instruction. All our cadets were given computers before they left so they can continue construction with us. So certainly I think we have an obligation to them not to stop in the middle of their educational program. From the 19th of September through the 20th of October, really started to focus on how do we take care of the employees. Systemics meeting with WCCA, I'll let you read that there, trying to make sure that they understood what was going on and how that in the way forward. From the 16th to the 17th, challenge programs in the Montana, Idaho, and California. they'll graduate our students that we sent there, and right now we're in the process of figuring out how to get them back. I think that's something that we owe them, and we need to bring them back home and return them to their parents and guardians. If we go to the next slide, the Nevada Youth Challenge Program has been very helpful to us. They sent some folks up here to help us in the interim as we were getting cadets out the door back to their parents and guardians. And they also offered to take any cadets that we had for class 47 up to 35 in their next class. So right now, the 14th of January is when that next one goes. We have a few from 46, 3 of them right now, and we're working through the process right now to see if there's any other, Wyoming cadets that can go to Nevada.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, the Nevada program, physically, where is that located at?
Sir, it's right near Elko. It's right now Elko, Nevada.
Okay,
and
thank
is it Henderson? Arlen? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So down in southern Nevada?
Sir, it's right. Take I-80 straight across right there to
Okay, gotcha. I thought you said Elko, and then you said Henderson or something, and that's down by Las Vegas, I think, right?
Carlin.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Okay, please proceed.
So we're really working on the possibility or the feasibility of other challenge programs taking Wyoming residents for future classes in 23, because I think that's good. We will retain 2 staff members to support graduates of class 46 and some previous classes. Though you're very familiar with the Youth Challenge program, we have a mentorship program afterwards, and so we need to continue to coordinate that mentorship and keep track of those cadets. Quick update on employees. Since the 14th of September, 32 of them remain on staff. 2 will remain with the challenge program at least through the summer of 24. We've had 4 additional resignations. 6 have found other employment, 4 with other Wyoming agencies, and 10 are still actively seeking other employment to the best of our knowledge. I think the last thing I have on this, sir, is we recommend an interim study to determine the feasibility of standing up the program in other locations within the state or other alternatives to support Wyoming's at-risk youth population. And that's probably something that we ought to get at after in the interim. At least that's where my head's at. I would just say, sir, that it wasn't an easy decision to make for all of you. I did not enjoy the conversation of if something had happened to a cadet, a sexual assault, a suicide, explaining to you, why I was unable to protect those folks. This conversation is not much nicer, but certainly it's better than the alternative, and I really did have great concerns for the safety of those kids.
I'm sure there's questions. Committee, Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question I have is, we had a transportation meeting August 23rd, 22nd, 23rd. Why wasn't we briefed on this back in August at the last committee meeting?
Mr. Chairman?
General.
Yeah, Representative Stivar, I think at that time, we were still going through the process of, hey, listen, we got to recover from make those corrective actions from the inspection. And I didn't sense, the intent at that time was still to continue on with the program through December. So I didn't sense anything out of the ordinary along those lines during that piece. I did have some discussions with some of the folks just to say, hey, listen, Director Moore had moved on and we were going to do something different there. But I certainly didn't at the time envision where this was going.
Follow-up?
Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I requested the inspection reports right after this happened. We got them last night, and it's 169 pages. Why wasn't the inspection report sent to the committee? Or when we were requested of it, we never got them.
General.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I can't explain the gap there, Representative Stivar. There's certainly no intent to keep anything from you. It's I'm certainly happy certainly can provide it. I know we did have some questions with, it's not our report, it's the National Guard Bureau, so I know we did reach out to say, hey, what's the left and rights for that? I don't know if it took that long or not, but Apologize, Representative, I didn't intend to delay or have you guys not be able to see that.
Senator Pappas has a comment.
Yeah, well.
Maybe a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, number one, I thank you for all the hard work you did with this. I know it's very difficult for you and for the entire military department. And as you know, Mr. Chairman, when I was in the Guard, that was when the program was being stood up, and I thought it was a great program. I still do. I think it's a very, very important program. And it's something that we need to make sure we get back on our feet again. I've been involved in the program both when I was in the military and as a mentor for one of the cadets. And so I know how this really changes the lives of these young adults. They when they first go in, I've met many of the classes, and they don't even look you in the eye. But then when you go to graduation, they have that assurance, they have that, it really is transforming. And then it's important, very important, that 12-month follow-on internship to reintegrate them in the community with a mentor. That's key. And so I just encourage us to keep supporting the military department to get this thing back on the road. It's unfortunate what's happened, but it is what it is. It's just a very important program that we need to continue on with. It really helps lots of kids. So
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate those comments. And back to some questions now. Representative Stivar, you've got another question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other question I have is the scholarship program for your graduating cadets. Is that ongoing, and how are they being paid? Because I've got a constituent that has got the scholarship and hasn't got anything.
General.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, the scholarships are handled through the Youth Challenge Foundation, a separate organization from us. And frankly, I had not thought about that yet. So let me do some asking. It's a different organization. They've got their own board. They've got their own fundraising mechanisms, all that good stuff. So I didn't see any reason why scholarships wouldn't continue because the money was there when they did it. But I will take that and get back with you on that one, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Representative Stivar, while we're on you, if you would be willing to share your microphone if Senator Boner has any questions going forward. Not to put you on the spot now, Senator, but you're welcome to join in with the committee on any question. Take it away if you have one.
Yeah. If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, appreciate the flexibility. Have somebody representing Platte County in this conversation.
A little closer to the mic, Senator, if you would, please, and use your broadcast voice for us there.
I'll do my best. I don't have the experience you do, Mr. Chairman, but just want to, I guess, make a statement first. I'd say I'm deeply disappointed in this outcome. I can tell you, when I was on active duty, I expected the folks under my supervision to come to me with solutions, not problems. And I know we've heard about the staffing issues for some time, but that's all we heard was a problem. So I'm disappointed in the way that this has been handled. I have to state that publicly. Furthermore, I think the focus does need to be on moving forward. And if we're going to do that, we have to understand exactly what happened here. And so I have some questions, Mr. Chairman, about the staffing. I think another significant issue is actually where are we going to, if we're going to reconstitute this program, where does a facility exist that's going to accommodate up to 100 cadets? I know that was part of the problem, that we couldn't, the National Guard Bureau wanted about 100 cadets. We couldn't quite accommodate them at Camp Guernsey, in addition to the staffing issues. But on the staffing issues, looking at this report, looks like, General, is it correct that you needed 17 cadre? Is that correct, to maintain that 25-to-1 ratio? Because we heard about how much vacancies we didn't hear about the minimum that you needed to do the program. So how many people did you need? According to the National Guard Bureau, and the inspection report is 17, is that correct?
Go ahead,
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. In the operations function, there's 18 positions authorized, which you really need 17 of folks to be there.
Right. And how many did you have?
Senator? Go ahead.
How many did you have at the time of that report, of that inspection?
Oh, shoot. It was less than that. But which specific time, I guess, would be, because as you can see, that rose and fell quite often during those 2 months. So it was less than that.
Okay.
Right, the
Back to you,
inspection
Senator.
says 15, so you're off, but not by too much. In fact, you go down the next paragraph on page 17 here under finding 8. Looks like in May of 2020, they had 12 full-time cadre. So why didn't we shut this program down in 2020? Why is this a problem now when we actually had fewer staff in 2020 than we did this summer?
General?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, when we, to you, Senator Boner, we augment those folks, when folks call in sick and that sort of thing from our admin side of the house, we push those folks into being able to keep after the work with the cadets. So that was that piece. This one, by the time it got to it, like I said, we added 7 state active duty folks to try to get it there, but it just kept going down and down and down. Where, like I said, I didn't think I could assure the safety of the cadets anymore.
Okay, Senator, for now.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
And so the other question I had, I heard some frustration dealing with the HR staff, that, we had a bunch of open positions and they're only allowed to onboard 1 employee per month. And that was a limitation. I got the impression from the HR staff here in Cheyenne. So I'm wondering, you mentioned that there are 3 applicants for the deputy director's position. And so you're making the claim that you couldn't hire folks. So of all those vacant positions, were they advertised? How many applicants did you have? And how long did it take? How many employees were you able to hire? What was your bandwidth on that?
Yeah,
General, just to go 30,000 foot on this,
Mhm.
do we have an impediment with our human resources operations for the state of Wyoming? Did that come into play?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, or Senator Boner, this one person, I don't know where that came from. That's 1 person a month. I don't think that's accurate at all. They can certainly, for our cadre folks, we actually had revolving, constant advertisements out there to bring folks on. So we didn't start. That was an attempt to get people on there. But like I said, it's indicative. I don't think anybody would argue that it's difficult to get staff there. I know we had a nurse's application I didn't talk about. We had 0 applicants for. Like I said, nothing from outside. It was just difficult to get staff to come work, given the Great Resignation, the price of fuel, all those things. It's difficult to get staff. Couldn't get enough people there.
I'll come back to you, Senator. I've got a question to squeeze in here. General, what are you hearing from these other challenge programs? It just felt like to me there might be an opportunity for some networking and people to move up within that system. Are these other states running into the same issues that we are? What?
Mr. Chairman, I would say somewhat. Now, Nevada, for example, they didn't have a class this last fall for the same reason. They didn't have enough staffing to pull one off. But I don't sense Montana or Idaho has that same one, but I don't know that much about it. I just know that Nevada was able to give us some assistance because they didn't have a class, because they didn't have enough staff for them to pull their class off.
Back to the senator. I'm sure you have a question or 2 more, Senator.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. And I think that these details are important. If we're going to understand, once again, what led to this failure.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me a little bit of, I hate to make a comparison to something that doesn't seem too similar, but say the state fair and the challenges we had with that organization. And the fact is that it was in an agency that didn't really do fairs. It was a regulatory agency. And I see a similar situation here in that we have a very important function to the state. And I think Senator Pappas was right on the target there. It's very important, but it's certainly also well outside the primary mission of the Wyoming Military Department. And so as we begin to sort of think about solutions, I'm wondering what other expertise we need to bring into this discussion, like DFS, for example, Department of Education, perhaps, and have a more meaningful role. And I think that we do need adequate administrative support for these geographically separated units. That was also an issue in previous years with other situations. So I think that it is important we understand, and if you don't have this information off the top of the head, I think that's important, Mr. Chairman, but I would like some information as to, how many applicants they got for these open positions, how long it took to hire them. Were they not able to keep up? Or were there just not people applying? It's either one or the other in my mind, and maybe there's another possibility, but I think we need those answers if we're gonna have a meaningful conversation. So, like I said, I understand we're dealing with challenges with personnel. Everybody is. We've also raised salaries quite a bit too, and we're continuing to do so, it looks like. So, like I said, I think that it's important that we have a true understanding of what happened here. It's still, frankly, the numbers don't add up. If we had 6 active duty members there, that's well above 17 in my mind. So I still have a lot of questions that apparently I'm not going to get answers to today. But I think it's important that we pursue that, Mr. Chairman, and so we understand. Because I mean, if we just, take the program, plant somewhere else, spend Lord knows how much getting some other facility ready to house these cadets, and we run into the same problems, and we're no better off than we were before. So there's I guess I'll stop with the questions. There's my statement, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Senator Boner, I just want to thank you for joining the Transportation Military Affairs Committee today. Obviously, you have a tremendous interest in this. It's in your district. You're part of the world up there, and I'm pretty sure that the rest of the committee shares all of those thoughts about where do we go from here and what we need to know so that we can maybe project to the future. But we'll go to questions and be glad to come back to you later if you end up with another question, Senator. But thanks for being here. So committee, Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I think what I've heard this morning is we have a couple of small rural areas that we can't recruit in. We have a area in Johnson County there where we can't recruit 30-some people that we need for that facility, and now we can't recruit in Guernsey for this facility. It would appear to me that we need to put our facilities somewhere that people want to go, and it's an interesting thing. The next generation picks their places to work based on other issues than we used to have. My generation used to care about hunting and fishing, and these guys, that's not their prime thing. And I think in this interim study, we need to look carefully at what do those professionals want for their quality of life, not what we're offering them hunting and fishing, and the only thing they have. We need a place that we can recruit and retain all kinds of those professionals. And so will this interim study have issues like that on it, or is it just going to be small communities against large communities?
Senator, thanks for the question there, T. And I would remind the committee, we'll have some discussion after we finish with questions for the general, and then we want to go to Ms. Legursky. But by all means, General, if you want to take a stab at that, if we're going to look into this, I'm sure it will encompass every angle we can think of.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think that makes sense. I mean, what Senator Boner said in terms of outside agencies, I think there should be no boundaries although there probably going to have to be some to make it a cohesive working group, but nothing from my standpoint would say don't exclude that. Let's get as many smart folks in the room as possible to get to an answer.
Yeah, Senator made some good points. Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be a redundant question, but it's along the same lines. Do you do an exit survey with staff when they leave to find out why they're leaving? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we do. I probably don't have the data that you want right here, but I can certainly bring with you. I'd say anecdotally, a lot of it is better paying jobs they go to. It's hard to work at the Challenge Academy. At-risk youth is a difficult one. So when you pay the wages that the state pays, and there's an ability to go someplace else that's maybe less stressful, folks take advantage of that.
Further questions for the general? Okay, thank you, General. We're going to go to Ms. Legursky. You'd like to come forward? Erica, thanks again for hanging in there with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Not a problem, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The committee did send some questions to our office, so I just had some prepared remarks on those, and then I'll take any questions. As General Porter said, this was a decision that was not taken lightly. He did have several conversations with our office and the governor. The safety of the cadets in the program has always been paramount. In August, the staffing level of the cadets for the direct supervision of those cadets fell, and the governor did authorize the 7 National Guard members to go on state active duty to assist, with the hopes of having those kids be able to graduate in December. As we heard, unfortunately, the circumstances of the staff loss combined with the inability to hire and train the staff meant that the program could not meet the required staff to cadet ratios for a safe operation of the program. Once the Wyoming Cowboy Challenge Academy could no longer ensure the safety of the minors, that is when the governor concurred with the military department's recommendation to suspend the class and to return those cadets to parents or to find alternative programs so that they could continue their educational goals. This was an extremely tough decision, and it was made with the interest of the cadets in mind. We did think that the military department did a good job of trying to get those cadets placed and then ensuring that they could continue that education so that they can graduate in December. We did have conversations about, like I said, just the safety of the cadets, and then also just the cadets' mindset as they left to make sure that they were supported and felt supported as they did this transition. The conversation has gone to kind of where do we go from here in the interim study. The governor's office supports a comprehensive study, and I think that that's what you guys have talked about here, to take a look at all aspects of the program, including the inability to attract and retain staff. One of the program issues also that it had was that we have a lot of out-of-state cadets that come here, and so we didn't even have enough Wyoming students to have a class. So just also to look at that participation number. It was mentioned by Senator Boner about finding a suitable facility. I think you need a suitable facility for those kids to go. And then also exploring alternatives for the Wyoming at-use risk, such as entering into agreements with Wyoming youth to attend other state programs. Within our office, as life-changing as this program has been for our Wyoming youth, and we do think that it is a good program, it was also mentioned that it is clearly not the mission of the Wyoming Military Department to run a program for at-youth risk, or I can't say that word, at-risk youth. That is one of the things that we had talked about was, do you get in the Department of Education? Do you have DFS? Who are some other folks that you can bring in to try and help support that program? Because we do think that it was valuable, but it is not the core mission of the military department. We do think that those factors need to be taken into consideration: staffing, location. Can they go somewhere else? Can we fund that in order to make that decision of the future home of these youth and this program? Thanks.
So, Ms. Legursky, it sounds like the governor would be amenable to, you mentioned a comprehensive look. To me, that says that this is not just limited to an executive branch. I mean, it feels like it's going to take more than that. So are you saying that the executive branch would be willing to serve with us on a comprehensive task force, for example? It feels like to me that would make more sense than maybe the legislative branch taking off on something and the executive branch thinking something else. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chairman, that does make sense, because I do think that we had some of those conversations with General Porter and the governor of what is the value of the program? Can we sustain that? Can we have those kids be successful? But we need to make sure that we have all of those components so that we don't stand up a program and then find ourselves in trouble again. So yes, I do think that we would be willing to sit on a committee or a task force with you for that.
Yeah. Well, as you can tell, Ms. Legursky, I think we're sensing that the committee feels pretty strongly that we need to take a look in that direction. So any questions for the governor's office, Ms. Legursky? Representative Stivar? No? Okay. I thought you were raising a hand. So Representative Romero Martinez, a question, please.
This may also sound redundant, but my question is, could we also, and when I saw the program begin, I kind of had that initial feeling that it's not really the military's, duty to convey this kind of program. However, I did have one of my nieces go to that program. And what I saw was happening in the stories that she was telling me is a lot of these at-risk youth were from, a lot of different reasons. There was a lot of not just going to school and hanging out for weeks or 2 weeks at a time and not coming home. Is that correct? Is that a big part of why the people were in the program?
Representative Ms. Legursky may not be able to answer that, but maybe you can toss that football to somebody else. Go ahead, Ms. Legursky.
Mr. Chairman, I would love to toss that to General Porter.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that is certainly one of the reasons. I mean, one of the idea when the program began was to get after those at-risk youths that are at risk of dropping out of high school and not achieving a diploma. And there is myriad of reasons of why that takes place, of which you enumerated. But there's all kinds of reasons to do that. The point being that we know in the society without a high school diploma, you're really taking a step back. And so this program was meant to get after those Wyoming students that were at risk of not getting a diploma.
Anything else? Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm listening to everybody say this isn't necessarily a military mission, and I kind of agree with that. However, I want to throw something out there. It's the environment and the discipline and things that are different that happen amongst the military that aren't going to happen with education, that aren't going to happen with DFS. So as we go forward with this interim study, I think we need to focus on keeping it where it was for those reasons. They do a good job when they're doing it, so I would just ask, do y'all support keeping it if we can make it work? And would you agree that you're probably the best place to do it? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Legursky, does the executive branch, is there support there to at least take a look? I think that's what the senator is asking.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCowan, yes, no, I do think that there is support to look at that. I do think that with the conversations we've had with the governor is just to make sure we don't only look at that. I think that the program has been successful. I do think that there is something that is needed there, but we just need to take a holistic look and make sure that we're placing that in the right place so that we can be successful in the future.
Okay, Representative, go ahead. What question?
Do you think it would be also a good idea to, in addition to working with DFS and the other agencies to create a true wraparound, do you think it would be also helpful to connect with these leadership groups where there's vacuums? And I know that sounds like I'm talking to the ether, but if there's these gaps in leadership within the Hispanic community, the Black community, these at-risk youth, many of them are minority, that we connect with the people that are off the reservation, that, because of the underlying issue of trafficking that's taking place simultaneously, which is a thing we need to really focus on. I just wanted to encourage the American GI Forum reorganization process and also working with organizations that are not with a leadership vacuum, but that do leadership, like Knights of Columbus or these other VFW groups that have a youth squad or whatever. Maybe they only have 5 people, but with a good collaboration. I just wanted to encourage that we continue to look for solutions. And I thought it was a good program. What I saw as a failure from my family's perspective is lack of follow through. And I think with what you're suggesting, there could be better follow through, and I encourage that, and thank you.
Is there room for other networks out there, Ms. Legursky?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I believe so. And like I said, in the conversation that we had with the governor on that interim study was just to make sure that we, kind of again are taking that holistic approach of how we can be supportive.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Legursky. Appreciate your comments and thank the governor for us. I'm going to go back to the general for any comments, and then we're going to go to public comment on this, General. Any thoughts before we do that?
No, sir. I think hearing from the folks is probably fine.
And we'll reserve the right to come back to you, gentlemen, if
Yes,
we
sir.
need you. I'm sure we'll have a discussion a little bit later on this. So let's go to public comment. Is there anyone? Let's try online first. Heather, do we have anybody out there? Okay. Is there anyone here today that would like to provide public comment on the Challenge Academy? Any public comment? Please come forward. Absolutely.
Try to get this to work. There we go. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Forrest Kaminga. I'm here to talk on behalf of a father of a cadet of Class 46. Like you said, I am also a state employee, but I'm here, just as public comment. Had a son in Class 46. He was, looking back at his, whole school career, from the age of kindergarten. He struggled through school. It just wasn't his thing. And it was always an uphill battle. We got him through school, whatever. But come his junior year of high school, he says, hey, what about the Wyoming Challenge Academy? He was just looking for a way to fast track his education so he could move into the world of trades. He was fantastic at running equipment, turning a wrench, all that stuff, and just to see him sacrifice what he had to go to this academy. He sacrificed half his summer with his friends, joining this academy on July 11th. Got through the first month of this academy. Homesick, constant letters back and forth between him and I. Hang in there, buddy. You'll get through this. You got to get through this homesickness, and then you'll be fine. And that first month, it was tough for him. And then he proceeded on, and he held his head high. He became a platoon leader. Was doing fantastic in the program. Great at the academic side, great at all the physical therapy, that side of things. And to get the announcement that he was coming home and they were shutting down the program was literally like watching a rug get pulled out from underneath him. Wind totally taken out of his sails. And what do you do with them when they come home was the question. You can't necessarily enroll them back into high school mid-September or mid-semester, sorry. It was extremely tough, and pretty burdensome. Of course, as a parent, when you have the child, that's a responsibility you accept, is to, kind of pick up the pieces and figure out how to put it back together and get him moving on down the road. I guess one of the things I thought about is why wasn't, I don't understand why this wasn't forecasted. They, before Class 46 was recruited and brought into the academy, they had to have known that they were starting to lose employees. They had to know that these issues were coming. And I will say thank you to the military department for everything they did to try to prevent this. But I question why they even recruited Class 46 if they kind of saw this coming down the road. And yep, thank you for putting this on the agenda. And I won't take up any more of your time because I know you got a busy agenda ahead of you.
Mr. Pinga, thank you very much for being here. Your testimony is not wasting any time at all. In fact, that's why we're here. So we're grateful that you took the time to be here this morning. Appreciate your comments. Any questions, committee? Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the gals in my office, her son was down there also. He is actually, it's been worked out very well that he's fast-tracked to go to the active Army. I'm wondering how your son is doing.
Right now, he's taken advantage of the online schooling that the military or the academy has provided him to continue on, and then he is also working construction in town, just kind of to take up the rest of his time. He is as of right now 17, so he isn't eligible to go into active military for another year. So it's just kind of figuring out what we're going to do to get his high school education completed and proceed on from there. And like I said, he had a huge amount of pride going into this program. And he was looking forward to that, that December graduation, and he was just gaining his stride when it was shut down and this all happened. And definitely sad to see, and very frustrating to say the least.
Any other questions for Mr. Kaminga? Mr. Kaminga, would you please pass along from the committee a pat on the back and tell him to keep leaning into the blocking sled, and wish him all that we can give him good wishes, okay?
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Further public comment on the Wyoming Challenge Academy? Anyone else wish to comment? Okay, we're going to close public comment. Committee, where do we go from here? Mr. Co-Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I would propose at this point, while we're probably not at a point where we would recommend any legislation, that we do, from the committee, send a letter to the governor and probably management supporting a task force from a broad cross-section of state agencies and branches to look at this issue and come up with recommended solutions.
I'm looking, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm looking back at the senator who shakes his head yes. Committee, what are your thoughts? Representative Stibar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to look at this 169-page report, comprehensive, and have further discussions on the failed leadership, because this is what it boils down to. Being prior service military myself, this has failed on the leadership portion of this. If this goes back as far as it has, it's on the leadership. And we need to figure out why it went downhill. I'm looking at this report, just scanning through it, looking at stuff going, that should have never happened. The stuff that happened in here, it's on the leadership.
Representative, I agree with you. On the other hand, I don't think we drive this car looking out the rearview window either. I think what has happened, and I think our focus at this point, I would suggest, is let's go to work and let's try to see where we go from here. Certainly, I think looking back some, Representative, you're right. I think that'll help us to understand what we don't want to do in the future. Very good stuff. Committee, is everybody kind of in agreement with what the co-chairman suggested? I think we go forward with some communication to the executive branch and to our management council. I think this is an important one for that at-risk population. I mean, when you think about it, if we don't stand a program like this back up, we're still going to pay to put our at-risk youth somewhere. There's going to be a line item somewhere. So unless there's anything else, committee, we're going to move on. General, Representative, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm trying to look at the information. Out of all the cadets that we had to, that 46 that we sent home, how many of those were out of state that we brought in, off the top of your head, if you know?
General?
Yeah, say that
I think
again.
you're getting some help from behind you there.
13? Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, 13 is what, and that sounds about what I'm tracking as well. So I think that's the.
Okay, follow up?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think maybe if going forward, something to look into, and of course, having that discussion out there, is if we're finding a challenge within house on supporting enough staff, maybe we can have that, look at whether or not we keep that out of state until we have enough staff to bring in out of state, so we can, and of course, we don't want to exclude, at-risk children, but had we not had those 13, would that have changed our ratio numbers to where we could have possibly kept the academy open? Again, it's one of those discussions I think we keep in there, that maybe we focus here at home first, and then if the program, different location, if the program starts to succeed again, if we change locations and we're able to keep that staff up, then we look at how do we, increase the recruitment from out of state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Byrd, understand, I think what the reason we take the out-of-state folks is to meet the staffing marks to run the program. If we were only to do Wyoming cadets right now, we wouldn't have enough kids to run the program according to the guidelines that National Guard Bureau publishes for us. So that's where that comes in. But point well taken, and I think it's something that we ought to look at too.
Okay, thank you, General. Thank you, committee. We're going to move on. We've got a couple of bills to consider before we get to an active duty line item in our agenda. These bills coming up, committee will be very familiar. We have, in fact, many of the bills that we will see today and tomorrow are bills that we requested be drafted after we had fairly considerable conversation about them. So, Heather, would you like to walk us through first one up, 23 LSO 005, Wyoming National Guard member referral?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and per your directive, I will go from an extremely high level, since many of these, especially, actually, I think all of them, especially this one, the committee has been discussing since May, and so this is just the culmination of those discussions. What this 23 LSO 0005 version 0.5 does is it creates the Wyoming National Guard Referral Member Incentive Program. It's a bonus program to National Guard members to pay them a bonus if they refer a person who is then what is called completes accession into the National Guard, so joins. If they refer someone who actually, and it's a successful referral to someone joins. So what the bill draft itself does is it creates a subsection in Title 19, or sorry, a whole section in Title 19, which is the military titles. And what this does is it describes the program, the member referral program, and that they will do it on a form, and the department will keep record of it, and that when it's successful, the person will be paid their bonus. And there are some definitions for what completed accession means. That's someone signing on the line. The referral bonus is the monetary payment, and a successful referral is when they pay the bonus. And then there is a sunset date on this. The subsection is repealed effective July 1st, 2026. That would be something that, if you look in section 2, wait, just one second. If you look at section, on page 3, you'll see that there is an annual report that the committee will do, or sorry, that the military department will do on how this program is going. And I would anticipate, if it's working well, that one of their legislative recommendations in the future would be to repeal the effective date, perhaps, or if it's not working, then it would be repealed effectively with that sunset date. Section 2, which starts on page 4, are the appropriations, the authorization of a position, a half position, to be able to administer this, and then also an appropriation to pay for this. That's the bill.
Okay, questions for Heather? Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Heather, looking at the appropriations, we have 144,000 for a half FTE, and then we have 808,000 to pay for the program. Is that just a number, the 144,000, is that a number used kind of as an average when you, for half a person? I mean, that'd be 288,000 for a full-time. Is that a number the state uses when budgeting for these things?
Mr. Chairman, there is not some magic with this number. I can tell you where it came from. First of all, the committee, I should have pointed this out also. At the last meeting, the committee did say that they wanted to run this for 3 years. So hence the sunset date of 2026. And you'll notice in section 2, both subsections A and B, that these are for, these go through June 30th, 2026. So that's 3 years. That's one more year of this biennium and the next biennium. And The estimate of the military department was what is I believe, if I got the math right, was the 808,000 based on some of their paperwork. And then this 144 was, I looked at another bill and a position. So this is not, I would actually almost put out there that it will be, well, I know it will be massaged both by the military department and joint appropriations as far as what the actual amount would be. There's not like some, here's what a position is amount, but it is, the 144 is 3 times, whatever, it's 3 times up to get the 3 years.
So
No, that's helpful. Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman. You bet.
follow up on that then, Mr. Chairman. So the 808,000 is for 3 years, and that works out to be about 500, give or take, paid for referrals, where the person would get the $500 bonus. Is that a realistic number? Do we expect 500 a year?
Let's go to the military department on that. Mr. Smith? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, it is a large number. We currently are projecting accessions in the range of about 300 for both the Army and the Air for the next year. We are hoping to get more than that. So it is a number that would be incredibly successful for the program, and essentially would mean we are paying a $500 bonus for every accession. So it certainly is on the outside of what the program would need. It does require the funds to only be used for this purpose and to revert if they're unused. But certainly it is more than we would anticipate would work for a successful referral program.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. I think that's important to remember, committee, that this is funding that would revert. You know, if it isn't used, it's going to come back to the state. And really, this bill is an investment in the National Guard, is what it is. So, further questions of either Heather or military? Representative Stuyvar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the referral program, is that after the recruit or the referral has completed basic training in AIT and is a member of the unit, or is it just fill out a form and you get $500?
Right, so what?
General?
Yep, Mr. Chairman, Representative Stuyvar, I think what we'd see this go, once they get into MEPS and they sign their enlistment contract, we would dispense $250 to them. Once they complete their basic training, they get the other $250 as a way that could work.
Okay, Representative, follow up, you good? Okay. Thank you, Heather. And General, thank you, Mr. Smith. Also, I want to go to public comment on this bill. Is there anyone here today that would like to comment on LSO 005 draft .5? Okay, if you state your name again for the record, just so that we are taking care of business, and then welcome.
Good morning. My name is Marilyn Burden, and I just would like to thank all of you for, I already thanked you for that, so I'll get on to the next paragraph. I'm here to share some concerns that I have with this bill. I only support funding the recruiting efforts if retention efforts are also included in the plan moving forward. Without efforts focused on retention, you are throwing away taxpayer money. Historically, at least in my 17 years I was in the Guard, recruiting and retention efforts have focused mainly on recruiting with very little effort focused on retaining the good men and women currently serving. The Department of Defense's mandate pertaining to the COVID vaccination has moved surviving manning levels to struggling levels and has had a negative impact on recruiting to the point that missions are feeling the impact. People leave bosses, not jobs. And they leave because they are disrespected, mistreated, and because they do not feel valued and appreciated. With the comments I've heard from leadership this morning, I suspect that there's a disconnect between the senior leadership in the organization and leadership at lower levels. So some examples that I've heard from this last year, and when people come and talk to me, the best thing I can do, or when I meet new people, is refer them back to the appropriate agencies. So some of my numbers may be in the numbers that the general reported because I told them to go talk to those folks. For example, a former master sergeant of mine retired in October of 2021 with 30 years of military service. 8 of those years were in the Wyoming Air National Guard. He did not receive a retirement award. What message is sent to the rest of the troops that you don't get an achievement medal, a meritorious service medal, or a commendation medal for 30 years of service? That's leadership failure, in my opinion. And then, due to the lack of consequences from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission case the Air Guard lost, in my opinion, in 2019, gender discrimination continues to be a standard operating procedure. One woman, a single mother, was harassed and tormented to the point that she transferred to another Guard unit across the country, leaving her daughter behind to finish her senior year of high school. Toxic leadership separated a mother and her daughter. 2 women in different squadrons were on medical profile and limited duties connected. Yes.
That we do have your memo to the committee, and we certainly can read through it. I'm going to ask you to just kind of expedite. We did cover the equal employment opportunity this morning a little bit. I would point out too that the next 3 bills are all aimed at retention of the military. So please continue, and I would just ask you to expedite a little bit, please.
I was very frustrated. There was one woman who, her commander literally told her she was not going to be allowed to re-enlist next year at the end of her 2nd commitment. So somewhere the general's message is not getting to his commanders. I've also met a couple people. I'd like to talk about the racial discrimination on page 2, because the witness is because the person that happened to is sitting in the room. And this is a man I served with as an airman, and I reconnected with him. He completed all aspects of promotion requirements for over a year, and everyone who came in behind him was promoted before he was. So anyway, like you said, you can read all of these. The recommendations that I have at the bottom, any funds awarded need to remain in a state account and not move to a Guard-controlled account. Bonuses should be paid similar to when the state reimbursed when they did reimburse premiums on $250,000 of life insurance policy. I got money from that, and I don't support an additional position because what I see happening is that somebody who is going to retire, they're finding a new position for their buddy who's retiring in the spring. And I had a whole bunch of ideas, and I handed those to Ms. Mulberry for the efforts that she has.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate you getting to the recommendations and getting back on the bill, which is really a referral program to help with our recruitment. Appreciate your thoughts, Ms. Burden. Any questions for Ms. Burden? Representative Romero Martinez, quick question.
Thank you, ma'am. I worked with you in the Air National Guard on paragraph 6 on page 2 on racial discrimination. Is that man, me?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Burden. Appreciate it. Any further public comment on this bill? Any further comment? Okay, we're going to close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure on this bill? Senator Pappas moved. Do I have a second? Seconded by Senator Furphy. Discussion. Committee, I think, Representative Burke, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We can get into the amendments down the road, but looking at the terminology of completed a session, basically just it says that I have to get somebody's name on a contract. I'd like to see, if we go forward with it and move into it, I'd like to see a little bit more constraint on that, requiring someone to actually complete basic training and possibly a 3 to 6 month portion on their contract. Looking at the active duty side of life, when we did that, I don't, and again, I've never been National Guard, so I don't know how that process works. If I get your name on a contract, does that mean I've already gone through the MEPS and I've gone through all that process, or do I can just get your name on a contract? So without getting into all those details, I would like to see something like that a little bit more controlled instead of just throwing names out there. Let's force somebody to actually have to get into putting some of their service into it before their buddy can just get some money out of it. I'd like to see
Representative
that
Burke, are
discussion.
you working on an amendment? Do
I
hear?
will if we continue to push it through. Yes, sir.
We're gonna work the bill here in a minute, page by page, and if you want to be working on maybe an idea, that would be great. So,
thanks, sir.
General, I want to give you an opportunity to comment on that. I'm sure you've talked about how these payments would be given out. You've alluded to the fact that 250 and then 250, but what are your thoughts regarding the representatives?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're in line, the same sort of discussion, because we don't want to go back and have to spend a lot of administrative time trying to figure out when the point was contracted. So I think we want very clearly that they've passed all the MEPS, they've signed their contract, they have said, hey, we will join. I would take you back, this whole purpose of this is to try to engender more recruiters out there. We're trying to build more recruiters. So that first $250 payment, I think, tries to get at that. And we give them another $250 when they complete basic training. There's always a possibility that the person that comes through may not complete basic training. But I don't think that's the fault of, that's the fault of the individual that refers them. So I'm certainly think it's open for discussion if we would want to hold that payment until they completed basic training for the $250. But I just want the committee to remember the whole purpose is to try to get that. And if we get too many delays in payment, I think we just lose the impact of getting all those recruiters out there. So I think what I would say is $250 when they've gone through MEPS, they're qualified, they're ready to go, and then $250 when they get back from the basic training is what I would think, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, General. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have any comments about the recommendation to keep this outside the military department? Sorry, I'll repeat that. Do you have any comments about the recommendation to keep the processing payment outside of the military department?
General, that came from the public today that maybe this be held in reserve over in some other account. What say you?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Baker, because this would be a state program, it would fall under the state part of the Wyoming Military Department that is run by Mr. Doug Schroep and his budgeting people. It was mentioned the old SGLI, Servicemen's Group Life Insurance payments that were done years ago. That's how those were run. It was run by state employees. They are members. They are in the military department, but they are the budget section, and they basically it's a state account. It's not a federal account. So, I mean, I don't know of a mechanism to put that money somewhere else in some other state agency, but it would be run out of the state agency part of the Wyoming Military Department.
That help, Representative? Okay. Let's work the bill, committee. Let's take a look at it. page by page. How about page 1? Anybody have anything for page 1? Page 2, 19.9.403, and we create subsection E with all of this. Anything on page 2? Okay. Anything on page 3?
Mr. Chairman.
Page 3, Representative Burt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Heather may have to correct me if this isn't in the correct location. I'm looking at section A on page 3, line 19 on the completed. I'd like to make a motion that we add, and again, with respect to General Porter's comment on what we're doing here is for retention, but if we don't get past basic training, then we're still not retaining additional members. So I would like to add in language that for the definition of completed a session that actually completes, individual completes basic training and 6 months of service.
We need to work this a little bit, Representative,
Yes,
and
sir.
get down to some specific language if we can, because this is our last shot at this
Yes, sir.
before we send it on to our colleagues. And then the other thing to remember on any of these considerations, this bill has a long ways to go, and we're all going to get an opportunity to work on it some more. So I think the committee's hopefully following what the representative would like to do. Heather, do you have an idea of what we might want to do there?
Yes, Mr.
We
Chairman.
could use your help.
It seems as though on line 22,
Okay.
well, to read the entire thing, what a completed accession would mean, completed accession means the referred person signs the referred person's name to an enlistment contract for entry or reentry after prior service into the Wyoming National Guard and completes basic training and 6 months of service. We might need a word before service. We might need National Guard service, but do we, Mr. Smith? Service would be okay? Okay, so, and completes basic training and 6 months of service.
Does that meet the intention of what you were thinking, Representative?
Yes, sir. And again, if the 6 months is too much, I can agree to 3 if that helps anybody get on board with it. I just think there has to be some buy-in to making sure that we get someone past. I mean, I've been through my active duty service. There are a number of individuals that didn't pass basic training, right? For whatever reason, whether they failed to comply, they couldn't handle the restraints, and then next thing you know, they're no longer in the system, but yet on the active duty Marine Corps side, whoever referred them didn't get the referral bonus because the service didn't benefit from anybody else in there. So,
Are you comfortable with the 6-month figure in your proposed amendment?
I said I can do 6 months or 3 months. It said if 6 months seems like it's too long for somebody, I would do 6, but if someone needs 3, a little bit shorter to get on board, I'd be friendly with
Proposing
that.
2 months? Okay. Mr. Co-Chairman, you've got a question?
Thank you. I have a question, mainly for the military department. So once someone completes basic training, in effect, they're in the military then, completely, is 2 months necessary? I mean, why would they leave within that 2-month period? I mean, other than you discharge them? I'm just curious.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Chairman Burkhart, they wouldn't. They have a service obligation at that time, probably 6 years to 8 years, depending on what that is. So they wouldn't leave. I would, if you indulge me, I think we're conflating a couple things. This isn't the retention side. This is clearly the recruiting piece. That the idea is to generate a bunch of folks out there that are referring young men and women from Wyoming into the National Guard. If we wait to pay those folks, depending on when they could go to, that could be as much as a year to 18 months later to complete basic training plus this, I think I lose all impact for getting the money to them. So the way the bill is written right now, it's once they become in this session, once they swear in, they get $500. Once they've gone through MEPS and done all that stuff. If the committee would like to change that a little bit, we could go to what I described earlier, to get 250 immediately and then 250 once you graduate. But the whole purpose of this was for the next 3 years to get us out of that bathtub of recruiting that we see right now by trying to generate a lot of interest and a lot of folks out there giving us names that ultimately enlist. And so my concern would be if we wait too long to pay them, I just don't have very many recruiters out there because they're not getting any money very quickly.
Thank you, General. We do not have a second on the proposed amendment. And it's been seconded by Representative Stivar now, so we can continue thoughts. Senator Pappas, and then we'll come back to Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I understand where Representative Burke is going, but I do agree with the general. I do think it'll put a damper on the program. The intent is to get people to raise their right hand and say, I'm going to join. And I don't have an issue with splitting the payment if we want to go that way. Frankly, I don't think that's necessary. But I really think that if we withhold the money, then they're not going to get the number of people participating in the program. I just, from past experience and other programs, I know your intent, but I think it may not be helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for the comments from the former general. We appreciate it. Representative Burt, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, it was just an open for discussion, right? We can look at the numbers. I'm not completely, I want to make sure we have some buy-in, right? Because it's a process to get somebody into the service and keep them there. I'm not completely against the split payment either. If we, the 250 out and then 250 in, that way we have qualified, we make sure that we're getting quality into the service as well. If the 6 months is on that, or if that time frame, we can get rid of that, just do the split to where we complete boot camp or the basic training. I can be agreeable with that. As it sits, it's a little hard for me to swallow on that, so that's why I wanted to have something else in there, some kind of a split. If we get a feel for it, if 6 months is too much for everybody and the time frame is going to hinder the program, obviously I don't want to hinder the program, but
well, Representative, we're going to consider the amendment. It's been moved and seconded. Back to the co-chairman first, and then we're going to vote on the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I would propose an amendment to the amendment. You shorten it to read after Wyoming National Guard on line 22 to add and successfully completes basic training, period. If I can get a second on that.
that's friendly if you want to.
Friendly, okay.
Yes, sir.
If that's
I take that
that's
friendly.
why I'm looking at the bringer of the amendment. Does the second agree with that? Okay, so the proposed amendment now, Mr. Co-Chairman, would you state that one more time? And
Line 20, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Line 22 would read, service into the Wyoming National Guard and successfully completes basic training, period.
Senator Pappas.
So I guess I'm okay with that as long as we're still considering some upfront dollars. To me, as I mentioned, I don't think we need it at all. I think it all ought to get paid up front, but I think it'd have more impact. I'd probably be a no on this amendment because I think it all ought to be paid up front, but if this amendment goes, I suggest we at least pay half of it up front. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chairman, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I would say is that if you go back over to page 2, paragraph E, I think we've given the department enough leeway that they could administer the program as needed. Line 14 says administration of this program shall require that, but it doesn't limit it. So I think however they administer it, it's up to them.
So, folks, go ahead, Heather.
Mr. Chairman, there's two things at the top of page 3. Currently, the payment is upon completed accession. So if the committee would want some payment up front and some after this extended accession, we need to make just a couple changes. So upon receipt of the form and upon completed succession, or some adjustment would need to be made to, because currently it is one amount. And second, regarding the word successfully, the committee may need to come up with a definition for what successfully completing basic training was. The previous amendment had only said and completes basic training. So if we want successfully completes basic training, we may need to discuss what that means.
Thank you for that direction, Heather. I've got the same reservations as Senator Pappas. I think the whole idea here is for individuals to refer people to the military. And if that individual has to wait 12 to 18 months to receive anything for doing that, I think we've lost the impact of the bill. So that said, I'm probably a no on this amendment. I'm not saying that we can't improve it as it goes along, but that's kind of where I'm at. Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nobody that raises their hand and goes through MEPS doesn't want to successfully complete the program. They've raised their right hand. I think we give them the whole payment right when they get to right when they raise their right hand, because that's what's going to help General Porter the most. That's all I have.
Senator Pappas, and then we'll go to Representative Burke.
In addition, I think what we're doing by doing that, we really complicate the administration of the program. Having to split out the payments, trying to track people. I mean, it's just going to be a headache. And for the very few people that may not complete it, I just don't think it's worth. I mean, it's a recruiting program, all right? Let's just keep it simple. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, we're spending $50,000 for a part-time salary to administer that for one position. That should cover that. If we have to remove successfully, because we can't identify what successfully means, that's something to look into. But I mean, if we can come to it to where we can agree that we can split it, and if we pass this one, then I don't know if it would go into referral bonus, which means we would have to change the language to the split. I see where you're saying. I mean, obviously, I don't want to hold the whole payment until someone completes. That wasn't the intent of where we're at when we talk, or on your last comment, is that split payment. You first get somebody to sign, and then the second half is when they complete basic training. I can agree to that. It was an oversight not looking at the whole payment, which Heather made mention on that. So if we can get to the language where we can add in that completes basic training, then yes, I would also look to where we can define splitting first when you sign in and get your name on the contract, and then second when you complete the training. It wasn't my intent to hold the whole payment.
So we have an amendment on the floor. Representative Henderson. We are on discussion on the proposed amendment on page 20, or on line 22,
Yes,
page
sir.
3.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just happen to think, I mean, really fundamentally what we're trying to do, I believe, is establish a policy to enhance the recruitment potential for the Guard. And then the how, I think, gets into the details that the Guard has a responsibility to manage the Guard anyway, day to day. And so does the Guard have, like rulemaking procedures or authority? I mean, do we have to get down into this level of detail in terms of the definition and so on? That's my question.
So General, the question is, do you have, based on this conversation today, do you have the opportunity through rules and regs to take care of some of this?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we do. In full disclosure, the intent of us would be to, as soon as the person makes the referral and they get through MEPS and they raise their right hand, we would give that referred person the $500. That's our intent. If that's not where the body wants to go, then I think I just ought to be honest with you and tell you I wouldn't make a rule different from that if it's left up to the military department. That's where our heads are at. If you want a constraint on that, then I would say you probably got to tell me that. But back to the discussion again, it is all about trying to get those folks to refer us members. And I just think that, as Senator Pappas, but there's very little risk in somebody backing out after they've raised their right hand, they made their commitment, they're signed the contract. The only thing is if they were somehow not to pass basic training to get that done. But I think, again, the intent is to get more recruiters out there that can refer viable candidates to us. It is difficult to get into the military right now, so there is a lot of hurdles to go through. If they make it through that, then I think, in my opinion, sir, that's a pretty good deal.
Okay, Representative Stivar, and then we'll come back to Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I got is the COVID shot, is that hindering your recruiting?
Let's go ahead and answer that, but I do want to remind everybody we're on this amendment. We've got an amendment on the floor, and that's really where we've got to keep our focus. Go ahead, General.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, that is true, particularly in Wyoming. I would say it's starting to become less. It's more people are starting to deal with it and have accepted it. It's starting to become less, but certainly over this last year, it was a significant. I know of at least the data we track, 40 to 50 young folks didn't join the Air National Guard because of it, and a similar number with the Army Guard. So that's been the case in the past. My sense is it's starting to get out of the way a little bit.
Factor for sure, Representative. So Representative Obermuller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, just a question about the person that raises their hand, goes to basic training. Can you give us a sense of how many people then wash out of basic training as a percentage?
Go ahead, General.
Chairman Landon, Representative Obermuller, I couldn't give you some accurate numbers. I tell you, I don't see it happening very often. There has been a couple of cases where a mental situation has occurred, and I can think of one in 4 or 5 years that's happened. Every once in a while, somebody will get injured severely enough that they can't continue the military service. Again, I can only think of maybe one in the last 4 or 5 years where that occurs, but I will certainly can get that data for you on folks that don't complete basic training. It's not very many, but I owe you some accuracy there.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it's acceptable to the bringer of the amendment, I would propose we just drop the word successfully. Let's not confuse the issue.
Still friendly.
And the second is okay? All right, the mover of the amendment and the second are okay with dropping the word successfully. So the amendment includes the words and completes basic training. Okay, so that's the amendment that we're going to vote on, unless there's anything else.
Question.
All those in, Representative Romero Martinez.
On the point of not wanting to lose impact, I think you want to get that payment out there upon completion, and I appreciate the bringer of the friendly amendment to the friendly amendment. And my question on page 2, line 13, on impact and incentive, when it says bonus to Wyoming National Guard members, I guess my question to the good general is that, does that include, for example, we have some former Guard members here that spoke earlier, if a former member of the EO office or IG's office still living in Wyoming recruits a neighbor, will they still qualify since they have an honorable discharge, or does not disqualify? I just want a point of clarification.
Chairman Landon?
Go ahead, General.
Thanks, sir. Representative, the way the bill is written right now, that is not the case. It has to be currently serving National Guardsmen. There have been some other states that have gone down this road that have put out for any citizen even to do that. We didn't go down that road just because of the administrative sort of tasks to get after it, but right now it is only for currently serving Guardsmen. So the person that you described would not be eligible for it.
I don't want to hijack the friendly amendment, but I just wanted to suggest that as this is in the early going, that we might be able to consider something like that if we really are going to address the leadership gaps in reaching out to the whole community to consider those options. Thank you.
Okay, we're on the amendment, and Heather, you've got something?
Mr. Chairman, I only have something if the committee discusses this most recent topic further.
Okay, let's vote on the amendment, committee. The amendment to page 3, line 22. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
The amendment fails. We're back on the bill. Heather. So
Yes,
the
Mr.
amendment
Chairman?
failed, and you said you might have something for consideration.
No, Mr. Chairman, it's only if the committee wanted to take up further discussion about what Representative Romero Martinez was
Okay,
discussing.
thank you. Not today, I don't think. So committee, we're on page 3. If there's nothing else for page 3, and again, I would remind, I think there's 27 steps left to go for this bill. So just remember that. Page 4. And then page 5 and 6, 4, 5, and 6, we get into the appropriation and the enactment date. Okay, are we ready for a roll call on the vote?
Question.
Heather, would you please call roll?
This is a roll call vote for 23 LSO 0005.5, Wyoming National Guard member referral as amended, excuse me, not as amended. Senator Anderson? Aye. Senator Furphy?
Aye.
Senator McEwen?
Aye.
Senator Pappas?
Aye.
Representative Baker? Representative Burt?
No.
Representative Henderson?
Aye.
Representative McGuire?
Aye.
Representative Obermueller?
Aye.
Representative Ahern?
Aye.
Representative Romero Martinez?
Aye.
Representative Stivar?
No.
Co-Chairman Burkhart?
Aye.
Chairman Landon?
Aye.
12 ayes.
Okay, committee, that bill will move forward to the session, and the co-chairman and I will be determining how we're going to split these up. So soon you will know which chamber gets to look at that one first. Heather, let's work through 0193, working draft point 4, Wyoming National Guard tuition benefits, please.
Mr. Chairman, the high-level view of 23 LSO-0193 version 0.4. This is the bill draft that goes into existing educational assistance benefits that Wyoming National Guard members have in exchange for their service commitments, and it extends those benefits in exchange for additional service commitments. So the two things that it does is that it allows a National Guard member who has not used benefits to transfer those to a spouse or a dependent. And I see right there on the first page, for some reason I have independents. The IN would be a technical correction, and I will make that. I apologize, seeing that little detail there. Spouses and dependents. And also, the other extension of the benefits is that if a National Guard member has not used benefits or has remaining benefits, they may use them to pursue a degree beyond 1 degree. So what this does is the bill draft on page 2 goes into the requirements for educational assistance. And right there, it describes that's where it can extend to a spouse or dependent. And there I got dependents correct, of an active member. And it refers to subsection C, because what's created, and so each of these on page 2 and page 3, they're just referring to the new subsection, which describes how it will work if a Guard member refers to them. So then on page 4, you'll see section C, and it says that if a Guard member who is participating actively in the Guard and upon completion of their initial mandatory service, they may transfer benefits that have not reached the limits that already exist in the statutes to their spouse or dependent to be paid the same way. And subsection B that's referred to, that says that it needs to be, if it's at a Wyoming or whatever institution it's paid to, it's at the levels of credits that, for attending the University of Wyoming. So these are existing, so it just sticks to those same limits for your spouse or dependent. and that the transfer of the benefits needs to be in writing, and it requires, and you'll see at the top of page 5, an additional 4-year period of service, and that's in addition to the 6 years that is already required of a member, that the member needs to complete. And then it is the provision at the end of this subsection C that if there's any remaining benefits that have not reached the limits that exist in statute, they may be transferred back to the member. So that's the spouse dependent extension. And then there's some conforming amendments on the rest of page 5 and page 6. And then on page 7, this is where it has the extension that says that the plan may be used to complete authorized courses to complete an additional degree, certificate, or other educational objective if there are some remaining benefits. And this one also, if you have that sort of extension, it requires an additional 4-year commitment. Oh, and then at the bottom of page 7, there's an appropriation, and that was based on, I believe that was based on, yes, again, some of the military departments' projections from the previous meetings.
Thank you, Heather. Committee questions for Heather. Representative Overeeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 6, just a couple of little independent cleanups there too, on line 7 and line 12. But my real question goes to the use of the word dependent. Heather, where do we go for the definition of what dependence means?
Mr. Chairman, I need to grab the statutes, but I believe that is if to the extent that a definition is needed, which I would need to look at that if it's if there's confusion about it. But I believe that Title 8 that has the amendments across where person and things like that across statutes are defined, probably it's in there. So I will just double check that to tell the committee. I'll double check that dependent is in there. Some of these words that are used across statutes are in that the construction and things in Title 8. So I will double check that once I get back to the computer.
I think the word's got to be dependent, doesn't it? But not independent.
Yes, I somehow got the word independent in here a few times. I do apologize.
I'm sure that's just a conforming amendment. Do you need us to deal with that, Heather, or can that just be a conforming amendment?
Mr. Chairman, the instances of independent, that's technical and I can certainly change. That's a total Heather mistake.
Thank you if you take care of that. Any other questions for Heather? Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I'm missing it in here, but nothing in here says tuition to a Wyoming institution, either the University of Wyoming or community colleges. My concern is they could apply for an Ivy League school and that tuition would be huge. So am I missing something in here? Thank you, Heather.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Furphy, yes, that is provided for in the existing current program, and where it's provided for is at 19-9-503. It's not in this bill draft because it's not changed, but where it is located is at 19-9-503, subsection C. Nope, not subsection C. The limits, hang on. It is at 19-9-504, A and C, that describe
Yeah, I think there's an in-state education requirement, though, in the act already.
oh, yes, okay. Here we go, sorry. It is 19-9-503, apologize, because it's not right here in the bill, and it is subsection B, but it's paragraphs 1 and 2 of that, which are not changed. They currently say that credits that are paid for are at the rate of, I don't want to inaccurately paraphrase, but I believe that says they are at the rate of a credit hour at the University of Wyoming. Is that right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Furphy, it is limited to what we would pay for an in-state school. The reason we did that is there are some military-oriented national colleges that run various educational programs at FU Warren that we would also pay for. So we didn't specifically ever limit it to just Wyoming schools, but we limit the tuition to what we would pay at a Wyoming school. And Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, in looking at this and in considering Representative Obermeyer's question about dependents, really, for most of what the military does, we don't really use the state's definition of dependent. We would want to use the DEERS definition of dependent. I had to look what DEERS is because it's been so long, but that's the Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System. So each military member, there is a process, and we have in the military department throughout the DoD, only certain people can be your dependents. And there's a process if you want somebody who is not your natural child or a spouse, like if it's a ward or an elderly parent, you have to go through a process to put them into DEERS. We would prefer that dependent then be defined as a dependent listed under the defense DEERS, the Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System. Because it's very limited, it's already a whole structured thing. Military members know they have to do that for their dependents. And that way we wouldn't get into an argument over what definition of DEERS we use, of dependent we use, excuse me.
So, Mr. Smith, when the time comes to work page 6, would you be willing to give some consideration where that verbiage would come in? And I don't see any problem with trying to, it makes a lot of sense to me that we would narrow that down a little bit. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Questions, further questions of Heather? Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I'm in my 9th year of my 10-year commitment, my wife has finished her schooling and it cost X number of dollars, and I get hurt in the military and I can't complete my 10th year, do I pay 90% or 10% of what my wife's tuition cost? Because I completed 90% of my commitment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Heather.
there are provisions in the existing act for the requirements as far as if someone completes, the requirements for someone to complete the their service requirement. And any failure on page 6, any member who has received assistance under the plan and who fails to complete the initial 6-year commitment required and maintain satisfactory participation in the National Guard shall repay all educational assistance received under the plan. That is as current. I just kind of skipped over the additional. So as to the 9/10 of what is what you're describing, it may be that it would need to repay all of the educational assistance under the current plan. I think under the current plan, if you don't complete your requirement, that you would pay all of it as well. It's not 9/10 of the years, it's whatever education had been afforded to you, even currently.
Mr. Chairman, to follow up.
Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
To
sorry.
further answer, so this program has been in existence for a number of years. We have rules, administrative rules that are already out and published for that situation where they have not fully completed. The statute says they shall repay, but it is subject to the administrative rules. Typically under the administrative rules, we do suggest a proportional repayment and not the whole thing. Furthermore, under the existing statute and the existing rules, the Adjutant General has the ability to waive all or part of any repayment. So in the extreme circumstance where somebody has a car accident, develops cancer or something, and through no fault of their own cannot complete the service commitment, we historically have typically not required repayment.
Okay, further questions? Okay, thank you, Heather. We reserve the right to come back to you for help and answers.
And Mr. Chairman, I will look at the definitions section to see if, where dependents would go, because I believe this section of statutes has a dependent, or a definitions section.
Thank you, and I do think it makes sense for us to at least consider what Mr. Smith brought up, tightening that description of dependent to include those stipulations. So we'll get to that when we work page 6, okay? All righty. Committee, if there's no further question, I want to go to public comment on this bill. Is there public comment on this bill, which essentially is a retention piece for National Guard? Okay. No public comment. I'm going to close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure on this bill? Moved by Senator Furphy, seconded by Senator Pappas. Discussion, and then we'll work this bill just like we did the other one, gentlemen. Discussion. Okay, let's work through page 1. On to page 2.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Heather.
I know that you were saying page 6. Page 6, my understanding was that was where Representative Obermuller was pointing out that I had made the mistake of independence. However, it would actually be right there on page 2 where a definition would go, because the definitions section of the educational assistance is in 19-9-502. So if it is the committee's pleasure to insert that, that's where it would go, is on page 2.
So did I hear you say it's in 1502 or 502?
502 is the definitions section of this.
So we've
Yes.
got to create a different, we've got to reference 502 at the top of the page to bring in a definition there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
That, I was thinking that we could just add, for the spouse or dependent as indicated in blah, blah.
Mr. Chairman, this is a section, there's the educational assistance of this whole program. It exists at 19-9-501 through 504. And so the 502 is the definitions that apply throughout this. And since this bill amends 503 and 504, putting it in, like saying, as used in this section, as I believe that you were just describing, it would not then extend to 504 as well. So if we put in 502, where the definitions for all of these is, then it would apply throughout the educational assistance.
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Heather, is there currently a definition in 501 through 504 for dependent?
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Burkhart, no, because this has not previously been extended to dependent.
Okay.
Oh, however, I apologize. I was going to look up whether it was in Title 8. However, I don't think that the one in Title 8 would meet the requirements that Mr. Smith had said.
Heather, if we would like to tighten up the reference to dependent in this bill, can we suggest a technical amendment or an amendment which allows you to construct the language in 502 at the top of page 2?
Exactly.
If
Yes,
the
Mr.
committee
Chairman.
is comfortable with that, let's go to Mr. Smith. And does that seem to be where we ought to go, Mr. Smith?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry I didn't catch this when Heather and I have shared this bill multiple times, but I think the amendment for the bill would be to add in 19.9.502 sub A, sub a new number 8, which would simply say dependent, in quotes, means a dependent enrolled in the Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System. And that's all it would take. So it would be dependent, in quotes, means a dependent enrolled in the Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System, period.
Heather, did you get that?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Committee, is that something that everybody's on board with or understands? And, go ahead, Representative Obermuller.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Would it be better to say dependent means a person rather than defining it with the same word?
Go ahead, Heather.
Mr. Chairman, it could say dependent means a person defined as a dependent in the defense eligibility enrollment system. I think it may be cleaner to just leave out the person.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Senator Pappas has moved this amendment. Do I have a second? Seconded by Representative O'Hearn. Discussion. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. Okay, good work, committee. I think we're back on the bill, page 2. Thank you, Heather, for working with Mr. Smith on that. Page 3, spouses, dependents. Page 4. Paragraph C is really the big part of this bill. Anything on page 5? Over to page 6. Page 7. Okay, page 8 is the effective date of 23.
Question on the bill?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Anderson.
I think we corrected the independence on page 6. Did we also correct the independence on page 1? Did we do them all? Okay.
Thank you, Senator, for making sure. A question on the bill. Heather, would you please take roll on 193.4?
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Furphy,
Aye.
Already ordered it.
Senator McEwen,
Aye.
Senator Pappas,
Aye.
Representative Baker, Representative Burt, Representative Henderson, Representative McGuire, Representative Obermuller, Representative O'Hearn, Representative Romero Martinez, Representative Stivar, Co-Chairman Burkhart,
Aye.
Chairman Landon.
Aye.
14 aye.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Good work, committee. That's a couple of bills that have a ways to go, and we will continue to work them as we go. Appreciate the discussion on both. Back to Heather. We've got, I think, one more, do we not?
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 more bills.
7 and 6.
Let's go right into active duty reform, benefits provided to service members, and Bill Draft 7 is Wyoming National Guard professional malpractice liability. Now, these 2 bills, committee, you will remember we had really good discussion over in Rock Springs on that, but and we requested that Heather draft these up. Take it away on 7, Heather, and give us a 30,000-foot view, maybe.
Mr. Chairman, 23 LSO 7 Working Draft 0.6. The committee directed us to expand it to other professionals beyond just attorneys and doctors of medicine. And so as luck would have it, the statute just before at 19.9.401, it includes language very similar to what has been inserted here. And so this is just that the indemnity is extended to professionals who possess a license or credentials to practice a profession and who meet Wyoming National Guard requirements for practice of that profession.
Thank you very much. Questions of Heather? Okay, let's go. Military Department, anything to add, Mr. Smith, on this one?
Mr. Chairman, no. I mean, we originally were looking at this because it only said attorneys and doctors of medicine. As a committee will remember, we have a whole panoply of additional medical providers in our ranks. Senator Pappas and others mentioned that there are a number of other people who hold professional credentials that we really want to protect when they're serving the state. And so that language Heather found, and I think the bill is very simple, and it just extends malpractice liability to the people who need it when they're on state active duty.
You mean in case an architect builds something for you or something like that during times of
Well,
emergency?
well, sir, I will admit, as we were working this bill, there was a little bit of humor involved because there are cosmetologists and tattoo artists that are also certified, but I will assure the committee, we don't have those specialties within the military at this point.
Yeah, thank you very much. Questions of the military? Let's go to public comment. Is there anyone who would like to provide any public comment on bill number 7, draft .6? So, okay, we will close public comment on Wyoming National Guard professional malpractice liability, and Senator Pappas has moved this one too. Second by Representative Burt. Discussion. Amendments. Question on the bill? Take roll, please, Heather. Thank you.
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Senator Furphy,
Aye.
Senator McEwen,
Aye.
Senator Pappas,
Aye.
Representative Baker, Representative Burt, Representative Henderson, Representative McGuire,
AWOL.
Excused.
Representative Obermuller, Representative O'Hearn, Representative Romero Martinez, Representative Stivar, Co-Chairman Burkhart, Chairman Landon,
Aye.
12 ayes.
Heather, would you please leave those open for the two representatives? I would assume that they would want to maybe cast a vote, and they can do that after lunch perhaps. So, okay, so let's go to the next one, Heather. LSO 006, working draft .4, Wyoming National Guard medical insurance premiums. Take it away, Heather.
Mr. Chairman, this recruitment bill draft is to specify that a National Guard member, when serving in state active duty, which is a defined term in the statutes, may be reimbursed for their medical insurance premium. And as for an amount, this bill draft uses the term you'll see on page 2, that an amount not to exceed what the daily premium cost of Federal TRICARE Reserve Select costs. And then there's an appropriation, or there's a position to administer this and an appropriation. This appropriation, you'll note, is for just the one additional year of this particular biennium, and then it tells them, it says that it's intent of the legislature that the position and appropriation be part of the military department's budget after that.
Questions of Heather? So to the military department, once again, we're talking about a position and an appropriation. And just for clarification, when we have to take this up the ladder and in front of appropriations, talk to me, General, a little bit about the need for a position, and I get the appropriation, but.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I think this is in conjunction with a lot of the things that we have going. If you recall, the legislature was very kind to us and gave us childcare as an ability as a retention mechanism too. We didn't have a position on that, but obviously the work created that. We add the additional discussion of this work, we add tuition back in and we add the recruiting incentive, it just became evident to me that I don't have the people to be able to administer all these programs. So that's why the position is, I'm a little uncomfortable with the half positions in each one, because if one particular bill fails, I really need one position. I don't, to help do all of those things. But I'm really open to the committee's discussion on how that should be handled, because I am a little fearful that if one were to go down, then I'm still stuck with all that work to be done without people to do it. And so that was the thought there, sir.
Oh, that makes sense. I just, I don't know if the chairman and I can be in town that day. I'm not sure what day the military goes in front of appropriations, but I think that's obviously going to be a line of questioning that you'll get, and that we will get as we move forward. Thanks for that. Anything to add, Mr. Smith, or?
Mr. Chairman, no, in talking with Heather, we were trying to figure out a way. It depends on which of these programs actually passes ultimately.
Yeah.
Because right now with the childcare that the legislature graciously passed last session, and then these 3 additional programs that do have an administrative tail to them, so to speak, it's hard to figure out how does the legislature approve the support administratively for these things when we don't know what's going to be approved yet.
Sure.
The only last thing I was going to say is the appropriation is only for 1 year. It's $55,000. And the committee may recall when we talked about this, we've had only a handful of people on state active duty in some years. And then in 20, we had essentially, 60 people with 700 days of doing COVID support. So the cost of this program projected based on the past could be as low as a couple $100 a year and as much as $44,000 a year. So that's why the appropriation is not very big, and it may well revert because it all depends on state emergency that year.
Yeah, appreciate that clarification, Mr. Smith. Thank you. Any questions of the military, guys? Let's go to public comment. I don't think we have anyone online still. Heather, is that right? Is there anyone here in the room who would like to provide testimony on this bill? Any public testimony on 006? Okay, we'll close public testimony. Committee, what's your pleasure on this bill? Mr. Co-Chairman moved it, and Senator Pappas was a second on that. Discussion. Amendments. Are you ready for the question on the bill? Okay, Heather, would you please take roll on 006, working draft point 4?
Senator Anderson. Senator Furphy.
Aye.
Senator McEwen. Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Representative Baker. Representative Burt. Representative Henderson. Representative McGuire.
Excused.
Representative Obermuller. Representative O'Hearn. Representative Romero Martinez. Representative Stivar. Co-Chairman Burkhart.
Aye.
Chairman Landon.
Aye.
13 aye.
Okay, committee, that takes us to the proper spot on the agenda for a break for lunch. Members of the committee and staff will be invited up to the Senate lunchroom. Lunch is being provided up there by yours truly. So we're going to take a half an hour for lunch. We actually, are we okay with getting started? We can go ahead and go till 1, can't we? Heather, what's your thoughts on that? We've got YDOT coming.
Mr. Chairman, it is your prerogative. We can contact YDOT to begin. And as long as we can are able to reach them, then we could start before 1.
Let's get back underway at 12:45. So if you don't mind contacting YDOT to make sure they get here about 15 minutes till, and that way we can get upstairs and back and get back underway, committee.
Okay.
So, General.
Hey, yeah,
Back to you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to take the moment to thank the committee for the past 2 years. That, you know, we never know what happens in the future, and certainly committees change. But I just wanted to express the thanks to the military part and the men and women of the Wyoming National Guard for your service and your support to the committee or to our members. We've dealt with a lot of issues in the past 2 years, some very difficult ones, and I appreciate your professionalism and your service to the state. Our state is well served by your service, and just wanted to thank you, all of you, in case we don't get together again as a committee as it's currently constituted. So thank you all very much. Please stay safe, and again, appreciate all the service. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for this morning. Thanks for the last couple of years, gentlemen. Really appreciate it. All of you, thanks for being here. And committee, that's going to do it. We'll break for lunch, and let's go upstairs and eat.